Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you had a fantastic week. We have made it to Friday. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, it's always greatly appreciated. 3-hour show once again today. No Dan Dockich as he is still down in Georgia. Got 3 great guests lined up for you. Matt Murphy, right, otherwise known as Logan Paul by the people who watch on YouTube. He's set to join me at 11. Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, he joins me at 11:20. He's going to get you set up for the weekend. And then at noon, Eddie White works for the Fever and the Pacers. He's going to join me. We're going to talk Fever. We're going to talk Pacers and probably a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But of course, we have to start every Friday show in the fall. It all starts the same. We have to talk about the Indianapolis Colts and their upcoming matchup, obviously this Sunday, going on the road down to, the horror house that is Jacksonville. And Jonathan Taylor, it doesn't look like he's going to play. Jonathan Taylor was once again held out of practice yesterday. Anthony Richardson was once again a limited participant. I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson play on Sunday. But I'm just not so sure yet about whether or not we're going to see Jonathan Taylor. He was asked yesterday about his ankle and kind of how he was progressing, and here's what Jonathan Taylor had to say about that.
I'm feeling a bit better today. It just sucks, when you're out there competing. It's part of the game, but you just got to take it day by day and just keep your nose to the grindstone and just try to get back out there.
What do you need to see from this week if you're able to get back into practice to have confidence going into being able to play on Sunday?
Really being able to move around, really being able to get in and out of cuts, being able to explode bursts, because especially at my position, defensive back, those are all heavy cutting positions. So that's the biggest thing.
So it sounds like Jonathan Taylor there talking about his ankle and, the mild high ankle sprain, whatever that even means. It sounds like he can't really cut. It sounds like he can't, move. And that's, like you said, they're kind of important for the running back position. Other injuries going on. Braden Smith and linebackers Grant Stewart and Zaire Franklin. They were both full participants yesterday after not practicing on Wednesday. Ryan Kelly, Kenny Moore, and Kwity Paye all once again did not practice. The big thing, though, is obviously the Jonathan Taylor news, right? It's once again, it seems like he's not going to play on Sunday, and this is the biggest blow that the Colts could take. If Ryan Kelly doesn't play, starting center, Tanner Bortolini, rookie out of Wisconsin, he was good last week. If Kenny Moore doesn't play, Samuel Womack III was good last week against the Steelers. If Kwity Paye doesn't play, then there's a ton of defensive line depth, as we've seen from this, Colts defense so far this year. But if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, it's like going from, driving a Ferrari to a Kia. Seriously, like Jonathan Taylor has been the best running back in the NFL, arguably, to start the year. It's been him or maybe Saquon Barkley or Bijan Robinson, probably one of those 3 guys. They've all been highly impactful, and Jonathan Taylor has been he's been the main driving force of this Colts offense. And going from him to Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson, that's a really steep drop-off. Like, those 2 guys, even by committee, aren't going to be able to do what Jonathan Taylor does. And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know yet. The good news, right, if we want to go glass half full here for a second, the good news is that running behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL should help Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson. Okay, Quentin Nelson, Will Fries, and the rest of the offensive line, like, they're going to make things easier on whoever is getting the bulk of the carries on Sunday. But obviously missing Jonathan Taylor is going to be an issue because that's a guy that Anthony Richardson leans on. And when I was thinking about this, it took me back to when I graduated college. I moved up here and didn't really know how to cook. I can make like 2 things, right? But look, I can eat the same thing every day. But I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it got boring eating the same 2 things, quesadillas and peanut butter and jelly. Like, that's like all I ate when I first moved up here because I had to learn how to cook. And it was a struggle for the first month or so. And so I'll never forget, I call my mom. I'm like, Mom, like, I am really struggling here. I know how to make like 3 things. I need some help. And then she reminded me that before I left, she gave me the best invention ever, at least the best invention ever for, a 21-year-old who is living on his own 6 hours away from his parents. And I was like, oh. And I started using this best invention ever, otherwise known as a crock pot. They're the best. Like, the meals I made using the crock pot, they were consistently good. They were easy, made my life easier. It's like, you mean I can just take these ingredients, throw it in the crock pot, and then just kind of do whatever? And it was great. It made cooking easier while I learned how to actually cook. And that's, I can actually cook now. Otter Creek, great point. The air fryer's better. I won't dispute that. I will not dispute that statement. But it made my life easier. The crock pot did while I was learning how to cook and how to survive and how to be an adult on my own. And Jonathan Taylor has been Anthony Richardson's crock pot this year. Jonathan Taylor has made offense easier for Anthony Richardson throughout the course of the season. And the Colts are in a bind. They can turn around. They can hand it off to Jonathan Taylor and trust that he's going to pick up 4 or 5 yards at a time. Okay, it's a real advantage, and it makes life easier on Anthony Richardson. But what is Anthony Richardson going to do without him on Sunday? Because that's what it feels like we're headed towards right now. Who's going to be that reliable offensive piece that Anthony Richardson can lean on when he's struggling? When we look at the best teams in the NFL, they all have something on offense that when they need to get going or when their quarterback's struggling and they need to get him settled in, they all have a guy that they can go to make that happen. Okay, the Chiefs, they know that if they need a first down or they know that if they just need to get Patrick Mahomes going, they're going to figure out a way to get Travis Kelce the football. The Texans know that they can go to Nico Collins in those spots. The Vikings know that they can go to Justin Jefferson. The 49ers know that they can hand it off to Christian McCaffrey when he's available. And for the Colts, that reliable guy was Jonathan Taylor. If he doesn't play on Sunday, who is going to be that guy for the Colts? And the answer feels obvious. Like, the answer should be Michael Pittman Jr. or Josh Downs. It should be one of those 2 guys, right? Like, that was my first immediate thought. I was like, oh, like, if Jonathan Taylor's not there, the offense will just rely a little bit more on Michael Pittman Jr. or Josh Downs. The issue with that is that Anthony Richardson can't always be trusted to get the ball to his wide receivers. Okay, that is the issue with that. So what I'm going to say next, some people aren't going to like. That's okay. I'll be honest. I don't even think that I like what I'm going to say next, but this is what I think the Colts are going to do. If Jonathan Taylor does not play on Sunday and Anthony Richardson does, I think they're going to run Anthony Richardson more. That's what I think the adjustment will be. Okay, now that's not comforting given, that Anthony Richardson got hurt last week and, like he's, started 8 football games in his career. He's only finished 4 of them. Okay, like it's not comforting at all, the idea that they could run Anthony Richardson more if Jonathan Taylor isn't in the game. All right, it's not comforting considering that Anthony Richardson refuses to slide. I do think, though, that when the Colts need to get their offense going, they're going to rely on Anthony Richardson's legs if Jonathan Taylor isn't available. Because let's be honest, if Jonathan Taylor's not there, Anthony Richardson's the best runner of the football on this Colts team. He is. So I think they're going to rely on his legs more. I don't like it. Chances are you don't like it either. But Shane Steichen has made it clear he is not afraid to run Anthony Richardson. Okay, and if he feels like he needs to because Jonathan Taylor isn't available, then he's going to lean on Anthony Richardson and his ability to run the football. So there's no Jonathan Taylor. I think that's how the Colts kind of counter it. There's some more quarterback power, a little bit more read option, right? Giving Anthony Richardson the option to run. I think that's how they kind of cope with potentially not having Jonathan Taylor, because as of right now, it seems like he's not going to play. With all this being said, whether Jonathan Taylor plays or not, whether Anthony Richardson plays or not, I like the Colts to win. The Jacksonville Jaguars simply aren't a good football team. Okay, they do two things well, and that's really it. They run the ball well, and they've done a decent job of stopping the run. The passing game, though, hasn't been kind to them on either side of the football, and as we all well know, the NFL is a passing league. Okay, Trevor Lawrence isn't playing very well this year. I've highlighted that all week. The Jaguars are banged up defensively, and they're giving up a ton of passing yards. Okay, they've given up more than anyone in the NFL, not named the Vikings. They aren't scoring points. They're 30th, averaging 15 points a game, and they're giving up a ton of points. They're 30th in points allowed per game at 27 points per game. Like, the Jaguars simply are not a good football team. Okay, they've been in a couple games late, but you'll notice that in the NFL, the best teams close out games. You'll also notice in the NFL that when coaches are asked, I think there's a death question in the NFL. If you get asked this question by the media, chances are you're going to be fired soon. And that question is, Coach, have you lost the locker room? If you're asked that question as a head coach, that means that things are bad. And Doug Peterson was asked this question earlier in the week, and here's what he had to say about potentially having lost the locker room.
No, I talk to these guys every day. I see them every day. And no, I have not lost the locker room. I think these guys have done everything I've asked. They continue to play and practice hard and battle, and it's a good group. It's a good group. The right leaders in there, and they know what we need to do, and they're not making excuses for it, and I'm not going to make excuses, and we just got to go do it.
That was Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson on whether or not he has lost the locker room. And no, I have not lost the locker room is the statement that everyone makes when they've lost the locker room. That's just the way that it is. And when you look at, his time in Jacksonville, it's interesting. It is. He lost 4 in a row last December, and that cost the Jags a division title and a playoff spot. He was never asked during that streak whether or not he had lost the locker room. When they were 3-7 in 2022, he was never asked about the locker room. Now, this is year 3 of Doug Peterson. They have had a 4-game losing streak every year he's been there. And I'm willing to bet that the players that have been there for his entire tenure are tired of this. Okay, and here's the other thing. The Jags are 0-4. They know that their season's over. They do. Players talk, and I'd be willing to bet that those players are talking about 2 things right now. 1, how awful their quarterback has been this year, and 2, that their coach could get fired at some point this year. And that is not a great place to be mentally going into week 5. I'll never forget my freshman year in college. I'm playing baseball, and I mentioned this yesterday. We started 0-9 in conference. Our head coach, Coach Cailtin, comes out very relaxed on Monday. It was great. We ended up bouncing back. The assistant coach, I won't give you his name because he's a head coach somewhere now, and I love that guy. He is a good coach. He's just a little emotional. I'll never forget, he came out that week, and we had a rough infield that day. And I'll never forget him launching his fungo into the air and just leaving. He just left practice. He was so upset. And we as players, we talked about it the rest of the year. No one bought into anything that he said because it was pretty apparent to us that he didn't want to be there anymore, and he took a different job when he left. Players talk about coaches, especially when bad things happen, and starting 0-4 is a bad thing that has happened. So I guarantee you the players are talking about that, and they're talking about Trevor Lawrence's struggles. And that is not a fun place to be as a football team going into week 5 when you have 13 games left. This Jacksonville Jaguars team looks like a mess. They're banged up, and as banged up as the Colts are, I think that there's belief in the Colts locker room in what Shane Steichen is doing. Okay, there's still positive momentum around that hire, right? And that starts at the top. Like if Jim Irsay believes, then it seems like everyone else on down is also going to believe. And it doesn't feel like that's the case in Jacksonville. Also, when you look at the Colts locker room, there is belief in what Anthony Richardson is capable of. And you can't convince me, as of right now, that the Jacksonville Jaguars players believe in Trevor Lawrence after this horrendous start that he's gotten off to through the first quarter of the season. And those things matter. Like, you have to be connected. There has to be a belief in who your head coach is and what he's selling you. And more importantly, there has to be a belief in who your quarterback is. There has to be. And I think that a lively, Colts team that's won back-to-back games, I think they go into the House of Horrors to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have lost 4 in a row and have a struggling quarterback and a head coach who could potentially get fired at some point this year. I think the Colts go down there. They beat them 24-14, pretty much ending the Jacksonville Jaguars season. They break the losing streak, and we're talking on Monday about how well Anthony Richardson played. Because if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play and the Colts win, it's probably going to be in part because Anthony Richardson played and he played well. Once again, I expect us to see Anthony Richardson. He's been a limited participant in practice these last 2 days. Jonathan Taylor's been held out entirely. We'll see what winds up happening, but the Indianapolis Colts are not the only football team playing this weekend. Indiana goes on the road to Chicago. They're playing Northwestern. Indiana favored by 13.5 points in that one. I'll get into that game when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. You can also listen to Sunday Night Football right here, 1430 AM, Indy Sports Ticket. If that game is anywhere near as good as the game last night, in which the Falcons won 36-30, oh man, I mean, then it'll be a great Sunday Night Football game. I don't know if you guys stayed up to watch that game last night, but it was nothing short of incredible. Kirk Cousins lighting it up. Oh man, it was so great. So great. Anyway, hopefully the Indiana Northwestern game isn't anything close to last night's football game. Indiana should blow out Northwestern. They are a 13.5-point favorite tomorrow, 3:30. And I got to be honest, like, it feels like free money. It really does, because Northwestern is a terrible football team. They are they might be the worst Power 4 team in all of college football. They're 2-2 on the year. They opened their season with a bye game against Miami, Ohio, in which they won 13-7. They then lost to Duke 26-20. They then beat Eastern Illinois, who's not very good. Then, in the last game they played, their one and only Big Ten game of that they've played in so far this year, they lost to Washington 24-5. Once every 4 years or so, Northwestern tends to have a decent to good football team, a team that can go 7-5, 8-4. If it's a really good year, maybe they get to 9 wins. That year is not this year. Like this isn't one of those years. They're so bad, Northwestern is. They might be worse than Purdue. I'm not sure that they are, because Purdue's really bad, but they might be. Okay, Indiana, meanwhile, has blown out every opponent that they've faced this year. They've covered every spread so far this year. And I expect them to do that tomorrow at 3:30 against Northwestern. I know they cruised to victory last week. I know they scored 42 points and that the defense was fast and physical and played well. But they turned the ball over 4 times, which is a lot. And you and I both know that Coach Cignetti was not happy about that. And so I'm willing to bet that they had a tough week at practice. I'm willing to bet that Coach Cignetti really pushed them, especially the offense, because Coach Cignetti has a high standard. And 4 turnovers, even though they won, does not meet that standard. Okay, I'm willing to bet we see Indiana play a clean game after what happened last week. And so a clean offensive game from Indiana, plus this defense that has really dominated every inferior opponent that they've played this year. And that's what Northwestern is. Okay, a quarterback that's only completing 58% of his passes on the year is an inferior opponent. A team that's only averaging 4 yards a carry and doesn't have a 300-yard rusher through 4 games is an inferior opponent. I expect for this IU defense to dominate and do more than just hold their own tomorrow. Like, I expect this to be an absolute drubbing. I think the offense plays a clean, turnover-free game. IU rolls 52-17. This game should not and will not be close. Now, I want to revisit something, and I think this is the last time I'll revisit this, hopefully for quite a while. But before, the end of the year happened in the WNBA, I am very much on the record saying that Cailtin Clark would not be, even though she should be, unanimous Rookie of the Year. Now, it was leaked like a week ago. It feels like it was even, further back than that Cailtin Clark was named Rookie of the Year. And when that leak surfaced, it was believed that she was unanimous, which was surprising to me. I did a whole segment on how surprised I was at the fact that Cailtin Clark was unanimous Rookie of the Year, because before the season ended, I said that she wouldn't be. And I wanted to revisit it just to tell you that I was right. Of the 67 people that voted on WNBA Rookie of the Year, 66 got it right. 1 person got it wrong. There were 66 first-place votes for Cailtin Clark to be the Rookie of the Year, and then there was 1 person, let's call this person idiot, who voted for Angel Reese, the one person who voted for Angel Reese to be Rookie of the Year should have their vote revoked. This is the issue with the WNBA. There is a lack of appreciation from the players, the people associated with the WNBA, the media around the NBA, the former players in the WNBA. There is a lack of appreciation for Caitlin Clark's greatness. Let's look at the NBA, which is, a league that can be filled with drama. If you're a good player in the NBA, then the players, voters, NBA fan bases as a whole respect you. Doesn't matter your skin color, doesn't matter how you're voting, doesn't matter, if you're, gay or not, whatever. All that matters when you look at the NBA is how you play the game. That's all that matters. Like in the NBA, if you're good at basketball, then people respect you. And that just isn't the case in the WNBA. Take TJ McConnell of the Indiana Pacers, who we as Pacer fans all love. The way he plays is incredibly annoying, though. It is. Like, I would completely and totally understand if there were some NBA players out there who didn't like him. Okay, he's like a fly that just won't get out of your ear when he defends. Okay, he picks up full court. He bumps guys. He's a physical defender. He gets underneath you, right? And then on offense, he's just relentless, man. He's an absolute attack dog on the offensive end of the floor. And TJ McConnell is undoubtedly, he has to be a top 10 most annoying opponent in the NBA. But he's clearly widely respected by his teammates. Whenever other players that don't play for the Pacers talk about TJ McConnell, there is clearly some amount of respect there, right? And then when you look at the stars in the NBA, no matter where they're from, like there isn't a star in the NBA that is not respected by his peers and the people who cover the NBA. And then you look at the WNBA, and it's the total opposite. Caitlin Clark shows up, and she was simply not respected by other players in the WNBA and by the people who cover the league. Just turn on any Fever game, and you'll quickly see that WNBA players don't respect her by the way that they foul her, hit her in the face, bump her, all those things. Okay? And then turn on ESPN and listen to how they talk about Caitlin Clark, and you'll quickly pick up how there is a lack of respect for her. It's ridiculous. Now, I don't expect for WNBA players, WNBA media members, former players, I don't expect them to fall at Caitlin Clark's feet and just, thank her for bringing notoriety to their sport. Like, that's not what I expect. Like, these are professional athletes, and they simply have too much pride to do that, and I get it. Like I completely understand that. But at the same time, like, you can't show her, like, a little bit of respect? Come on now. Like, even if the other players and media people didn't like her, there should still be a tremendous amount of respect shown towards Caitlin Clark because of how great of a player she is. Okay, finished 4th in the MVP voting as a rookie. Like, she is clearly already one of the best players in the WNBA. So there should be respect for her from that standpoint, and there should also be respect for her because of what she has done for the WNBA. She's really put it on the map. Okay, because like, I don't know about you, but like I didn't watch the WNBA before she showed up. I'm not on TikTok anymore, but I remember when I was, there was this guy that I followed. He lives here in Indianapolis, and his whole bit was he would go downtown to, the circle where the big monument is, and he would offer people, he'd be like, hey, would you like these courtside WNBA tickets, or would you like $1? That was his whole bit, and people would take the $1. And then other times he'd go down to Monument Circle, and he'd look at people, and he'd be like, I'll give you $100 if you can name a single person on your local WNBA team's roster. So basically, like, if you can name a single Fever player, I'll give you $100. And nobody could do it. If that guy did that bit now, he would run out of money very quickly because those courtside seats would be insanely expensive and people would opt for those. And if he walked downtown and he was like, if you can name any player on the Indiana Fever roster, like, I'll give you $100. And people would be like, Caitlin Clark. And then if he was like, okay, double or nothing, they'd be able to just run through the list of Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, Katie Lou Samuelson. I'm out here naming people I didn't even know existed, 7 months ago. Okay, like, she has done so much, Caitlin Clark has, for the WNBA. And like, that alone should give her some sort of respect from her peers, but it hasn't. And that is the issue. And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen in the WNBA. And that is their biggest issue. I'm excited to have Eddie White on at noon. We're going to talk about this because, look, in the WNBA, until the jealousy subsides, that league will never be taken seriously. It'll be looked at as this soap opera drama-filled league. Okay, congrats to Caitlin Clark on being named Rookie of the Year. To the rest of the WNBA, get over the fact that she's better than you. It's going to help you so much in the long run. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, Big Ten basketball media days happened yesterday. Mike Woodson gave a couple interesting responses that I'd like to get into. We're really not that far away from the start of basketball season. The NBA season is less than 2 weeks away. IU basketball starts up here soon. Purdue basketball starts up here soon. Playoff baseball is happening right now. I've got some thoughts on that as well. But we're going to get into Mike Woodson and some of the things he said yesterday at Big Ten Media Days when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
More winners, more often. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a fantastic Friday. I hope you've had a good week. It's only getting better. It's only getting better here on the real Jonathan Smith Show. We've got three great guests lined up. Matt Murphy, local Indianapolis guy, loves the Colts, loves the Pacers, loves really all things Indianapolis. He's set to join me at 11 o'clock. Then at 11:20, Zack Gray at ZG the Grapevine on Twitter. He's going to join me. He's going to give away some college football and NFL bets for this upcoming weekend. And then at noon, we got Eddie White from the Fever and the Pacers joining the show. We're going to talk Pacers. That season, it's not far away. It's right around the corner. It's coming up quickly. Excited to have Eddie on to talk about that. Something else that's coming up is college basketball. College basketball is not that far away at all. People are excited to see what Purdue looks like this year. Indiana, a lot of new transfers, right? Obviously, they've got some returners as well, but new transfers coming in. Omar Ballo kind of headlining that group. People are excited to see what they look like. I saw a poll yesterday. Not sure if this is accurate or not, but Purdue was projected to win the league. IU projected to finish second. So we could have a great college basketball season in the state of Indiana this year, as we should, because this is Indiana, and this is the state for college basketball. And Mike Woodson yesterday at Big Ten Media Days, he was asked, obviously, about his team, and more specifically, he was asked about how rebuilding this team through the portal is gone, because he's lost, a decent number of players from last year, either to the portal or to the NBA draft or to guys just graduating in general. Here is Indiana Hoosiers head basketball coach Mike Woodson talking about how he's retooled this team this offseason.
Well, we had no choice. I mean, I lost 3 players to the portal. I lost 2 seniors, and Khalil Ware was drafted to the Heat as the 15th pick in the draft. So, I mean, I had to go out along with my staff and start really working to try to build our team back. And we were able to come west and get Big Ballo, as you mentioned, and Miles Rice and Kanan Carlisle. And then we were fortunate enough to get Goody to come back home, which he's a Bloomington kid. And then we got a freshman in Bryson Tucker, who kind of fell in our laps late. I had looked at him a couple of years ago when he was at IMG, and we were able to get him on board. So, I mean, we've built basically through the portal with 1 freshman, but it's been work in progress. A summer program I thought went extremely well. And then we gave them a month off, and now we're back at official practicing. And it's been a good run so far. We just got to put it all together and see where it leads us.
Indiana head basketball coach Mike Woodson right there. Didn't you guys just miss that lively, excited voice? Mike Woodson sounds like he's ready for basketball season. Oh, geez. I don't know. You can talk about summer workouts. You can talk about how excited you are about all these different transfers and how you went west and got Carlisle and Ballo and, all these guys, so great. Miles Rice, so great. So exciting, I guess. But when it comes to their summer workouts, which apparently, went extremely well. Those were Mike Woodson's words right there. I got to be honest, I don't care. I really don't. When it comes to their summer workouts, there's only one thing I really care about. Did they learn how to shoot the basketball? That's really the question. I remember last season, if you were listening to the show at the time, there was one thing that I tracked, and it was Indiana's ability to shoot the ball. Because when they shot 38% from 3 or better, they went like 9-1, something like that. Okay? Like, I don't care if Indiana got better at pick and roll defense. I don't care if they got better at, switching. I don't care if they got better at ball handling or decision making. Don't care about any of it. I just want to know if this Indiana Hoosiers basketball team figured out how to shoot the ball, because that was their biggest issue last year. And that is the most important skill to have in basketball at any level nowadays. The reason why Indiana couldn't beat Nebraska, which, to be fair, is coached by Fred Hoiberg, one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. But the reason why they couldn't beat them was because Nebraska had this ability to shoot the ball from three halfway decently. Meanwhile, Indiana was like, nope, we're going to go 3 out, 2 in, back to the basket. Malik Renew, hopefully you can make a layup. If you don't, maybe Khalil Ware can grab a rebound and finish. That was the offense last year, and that simply doesn't work anymore. You have to be able to shoot the basketball at some capacity. Okay, when you look at the guys that they went and got in the portal, the only kid that can shoot is the dude from Indiana that played at Illinois last year. He's the only one. And you need more than one guy who can shoot the ball. Mackenzie Mbako shot it well last year. Hopefully that continues, but you need more than 2 guys to shoot the ball well from 3 if you're going to beat anybody, especially the teams in Big Ten play. Okay, like this team just feels like it's just got a long way to go. And like that's frustrating because this is year 4 of Mike Woodson. Like I think we should be excited, right? Because people clearly expect for this Indiana team to be good. If they didn't, then they wouldn't have been voted to finish second in the Big Ten behind Purdue. Look, if you finish second in the Big Ten, that means that you have a really good basketball team. And that should be like this, like that should create some excitement. And it doesn't create any excitement in me whatsoever because I had to listen to Mike Woodson talk about where the program is now compared to where it was when he played and compared to where he wants it to be. Here is Indiana Hoosiers head basketball coach Mike Woodson talking about the current state of the program compared to where it should be.
I mean, I think we took a step backwards last year by not making the tournament, and that was kind of disappointing. But again, we got to move forward. The first 2 years, a lot of those guys hadn't been in the tournament for 5 years, and then they tasted it a little bit. You know, at the end of the day, you know, along with these guys, it's about winning Big Ten titles and winning national titles. That's why I came back, and I remember the good days back when I played, and some of the great years that Bob Knight had at Indiana that, you know, it's been missing. And to be back and I'm able to, you know, put my stamp on it, you know, it's going to be great for me. I mean, I'm happy to be back, but we still got a long way to go as a ball club.
Oh, man. Indiana Hoosiers head basketball coach Mike Woodson right there. Let's start with the good. Let's start with the good side of this. I appreciate Mike Woodson talking about expecting and wanting to win, you know, Big Ten titles and national titles, because that is the standard at Indiana. Okay, like I don't, from my understanding, just from the people that I've talked to that are Indiana fans, like if you make a Sweet 16, they're gonna be like, "That's cool. We haven't done that in a while," but there is a clear expectation for more. And this is year 4 for Mike Woodson. And to close that statement, he said this ball club still has a long way to go. Look, it's year 4. The ball club should not have a long way to go. It should be rolling. It should have been rolling last year. Okay, like in the world of transfers, it does not take 4, 5, 6 years to rebuild a basketball program. It doesn't. He called not making the NCAA tournament last year a disappointment. That is simply unacceptable. Okay? Like it wasn't a disappointment last year. It was unacceptable. It's year 3. Like I appreciate him knowing what the standard is. He should know the standard considering that he played for IU and Coach Knight and he was part of the history that has been created at Indiana. But in year 4, Indiana should be closer to competing for titles than what they are. Okay, in year 4, Mike Woodson's program shouldn't be the second best program in the state. Shouldn't be. I love Matt Painter. Okay, my wife went to Purdue. All of my in-laws went to Purdue. I like watching Purdue play basketball. They're an outstanding team. But they are the little brother. They are. Like Indiana should never be playing second fiddle to Purdue. And, you know, listening to Mike Woodson at Big Ten Media Days sound bored is like that's an issue for me. Okay, the idea that this team didn't make the tournament last year is unacceptable. The fact that this team isn't closer to competing for titles, the fact that this team apparently still has a long way to go is unacceptable. And that is nowhere near the standard that's been set at Indiana. I really wish that Dan was here today, Dan Dockage, because I would love to hear him discuss everything that Mike Woodson just said. So I guess we'll have to wait till Monday, the Dan Dockage Show, noon to 3, Monday through Fridays. Normally, he's out today down in Georgia taking care of some stuff. But, I don't want to be negative. It's Friday. Okay, I want to have a good time. Okay, I want to talk about things that make me happy. And every time I have to talk about Mike Woodson and what a failure this Indiana basketball program has been under him, it just like it ruins my mood. And I don't want my mood to be ruined. I've got great guests today. Matt Murphy at 11, Zack Gray at 11:20, Eddie White at noon. Like, great lineup today. Can't wait. And when those people come on, like I'd like to be in a better mood. So I'm going to transition away from this Indiana basketball program that breeds nothing but disappointments. John Buzzard, fantastic point. Notre Dame recruiting incredibly well, right? They could potentially, we'll see, potentially be a real threat at some point. Imagine this for a second. Imagine a world where Indiana basketball was the third best basketball program in the state. Oh man, that'd be very interesting. If they were playing third fiddle to Notre Dame, a football school, and Purdue, I don't think people would like that very much. But something that people do like very much, and something that I think everyone, quite frankly, should pay attention to, is playoff baseball. I love playoff baseball. Okay, like some of the best moments in sports history have been made in playoff baseball. Seriously, like the Pete Alonso home run last night, it really upset me because I rolled with the sack man with the Brewers on the money line, but Pete Alonso goes Oppo Taco in the top of the ninth to take a 3-2 lead, and the Mets wind up winning that game 4-2 and advancing to the NLDS. Like, we've got outstanding games coming up, and I can't wait. I love playoff baseball. It is truly one of the best things in sports. There are no games scheduled for today, but starting tomorrow, we got 4 great baseball games tomorrow. Starting at 1 o'clock, we got Detroit and Cleveland, a battle of the American League Central. Okay, Cleveland was, I think, one of the surprises of the year. I don't think people expected them to be as good as they are. The payroll's down. They don't have a ton of stars. Jose Ramirez is obviously still there, one of the best switch hitters in baseball. He's been one of the best hitters in baseball for, the past almost 10 years now. Okay, and then obviously you got the Tigers, who are hot, playing really well. Hopefully they can keep it rolling. Right from there, you got the Royals and the Yankees. I talked about this series a bit yesterday. A battle of the 2 best players in the American League, and a battle of the opposites. Big star-studded, big-time payroll Yankees versus small market, not very many stars, Kansas City Royals. That series is going to be an absolute blast to watch. But I have to be honest, the 2 series that I think I'm more excited about are in the National League, because stars are what get us to watch games. The Mets and the Phillies, that is nothing but big stars, big payrolls, and hopefully big moments. Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, JT Realmuto. I mean, like, just stars all over the field in this series, and I cannot wait to watch the Mets and the Phillies go at it. That could potentially be the best, divisional series that we see this year in Major League Playoff Baseball. And then you got the Padres and the Dodgers. Divisional matchup. The NL West going at it. More stars than any other series. Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Clayton Kershaw, the King guy who just absolutely shoved for the Padres game 1. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm looking forward to it. All of these, series should be amazing. John Buzzard with a fantastic question. How do you feel about 12 pitchers being used in a 2-1 Royals win? I got to be honest. That is the one thing about playoff baseball that does drive me a little nuts. All the pitching changes, right? It really kind of chops up the flow of the game. But at the same time, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Because baseball is slower paced, it builds suspense. Okay, it's like bases loaded, top of the seventh, lefty coming up to the plate, and then you have to sit through 2 minutes and just like sit in the weight of like what's about to happen as whatever team warms up their best lefty, right? Like so, there's this aspect of I hate how it stops the action. It kind of slows down the momentum, but at the same time, like it builds a bit of suspense because you're having to sit and wait for this moment that you're dying to see, right? Like who's going to come out on top, right? Because baseball, the matchup between the pitcher and the hitter, it's the ultimate one-on-one in any sport, and it's fun. I'm so excited to watch all of these games happen. Tigers, Guardians, Royals, Yankees, Mets, Phillies, Padres, Dodgers. All those series start on Saturday, and I can't wait. There's nothing better than playoff baseball. When we come back here in about 5 minutes, Matt Murphy, big Colts fan, big Pacers fan, just an Indianapolis guy in general. He's set to join me when we come back here in 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a great week. Happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in no matter how you're tuning in. Joining me now is a guy that it's just been too long since I've had him on. Sadly, he's only on the phone, so we don't get to see his amazing hair or anything like that. But Matt Murphy joins me right now. Matt, what's going on, man?
Hey, Johnny, how we doing? Happy Friday.
Dude, happy Friday, man. I'm so glad it's Friday. I'm excited for IU football this weekend. I know you're a Purdue fan, so you don't get to participate in the joy of looking forward to Saturdays. But I'm ready for this weekend. I'm looking forward to the Colts game and just everything that kind of comes with that. How excited are you? Or before we talk Colts Jags, just give me your general thoughts on how the Colts have looked through the first 4 weeks this season.
Yeah, well, it has been interesting to say the least. I think one of the lowest moments as a Colts fan was watching Malik Willis efficiently run an offense he's been a part of for about 2 weeks in that Packers game. And then you see him grind out a win against Chicago, and then also grind out a win against the Steelers. I mean, they almost blew it there at the end. But no, it's been, I would say, disappointing defensively for sure, at least at the beginning. I mean, the historically bad run defense to start, but they've really looked like they've kind of tightened that up. And overall, it has looked like Anthony Richardson did kind of take a step back, at least in terms of, you look at some of his numbers last year, he's a little bit more accurate, and certainly not his interception percentage isn't as high as, or wasn't as high last year as it is this year so far. But overall, I think you see some flashes, you see what it could be, but you really just hope that he figures out how to sustain drives. I think that's the biggest, most frustrating part as a fan right now, is just feeling like when he's in the game, it's either 3 explosive plays, touchdown, or a 3-and-out or a pick. So he really needs to figure out how to sustain drives. But yeah, overall, I see the vision long term. I certainly haven't given up on him yet.
Oh, you know that I haven't either. I've got some listeners that have for some reason. Joined by good friend Matt Murphy, Indianapolis sports diehard professional sports watcher as well. So the one and only Matt Murphy. They've I don't know. I'm encouraged because I feel like they've gotten better as the years progressed, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, like, we need Anthony Richardson to be a little more consistent, which hopefully is starting to happen. Like the drive and a half that we saw from him on Sunday against Pittsburgh. Like, that was, I think, the best that he's looked. And then sadly, he gets, he takes a helmet to the hip and he misses the rest of the game. But I think that we're heading in the right direction. That's kind of how I feel about it. Do you feel the same way, or are you still a little worrisome?
Yeah, I mean, about his game overall, it's just, you got to know what you sign up for, and cheering for the Colts right now and being a fan and having Anthony Richardson as your quarterback it's going to be a lower percentage of completion. He does, I believe, at least did at one point lead the league in yards per attempt. So even with the low completion, he's hitting on explosive plays. And when he does complete the ball, moving the ball well down the field, more than a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And so overall, you look at the state of the passing game in the NFL right now is, outside of last night with Kirk Cousins going for 500 yards, it's been low yards per game, low yards per attempt, low yards per completion, a lot of too high safety looks. And with AR, he's been kind of the opposite, where the rest of the league has been higher percentage but lower yards per attempt. He has been, higher completion percentage, and on the shorter routes he has been much lower percentage, but he's definitely moving it down the field. So I really think if he could just clean it up a little bit, make some of the easy throws, he could really be a really productive quarterback in the league. I would like to see him slide more, probably.
Yeah.
Kind of it's a catch-22, because he's built like a linebacker and can run through linebackers, but you just don't want him to. So he appears to be made of maybe not glass, but plastic. So, yeah, we'll see. But again, I'm more hopeful than maybe most, just because he's the youngest quarterback in the league right now, and certainly has shown some flashes. So, just hope he cleans up some of what you would think would be the easier stuff, and when he puts it all together, I think he really could be pretty special.
That's how I feel about it. We'll see. Hopefully, he puts it together on Sunday, because they're going into what is the House of Horrors down there in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
9 straight losses. I don't have to tell anybody that. I'm sure all the Colts fans are very aware of it. The good news, if there is any when it comes to playing down there, the Jags are 0-4. They've been in a couple games late, but good teams close out those games, and they didn't. Trevor Lawrence has been awful this year. Doug Peterson is on the hot seat. I'm pretty hopeful. I think the Colts win. How do you kind of feel heading into the game?
Well, I'm just going to learn from my last 9 years plus of experience, and I expect very little to nothing from them in Jacksonville. And overall, I mean, you look, and just the NFL is just full of parity across the league, right? The last week, Steelers coming in, 3-0, and really, best defense in the league, blah, blah, blah. And then the Colts move it on them, both with Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. And then they're talking about, well, their offense isn't very good. They moved it on the Colts, obviously, in the air. And they were talking about how bad they're running. So there's just so much parity overall. I think it's hard for a team to start 0-5. And the Jags have had some close calls. So I think they're a better team than maybe people realize. And just, again, the Colts they're banged up, man. I mean, you look at you got, 7 or 8 starters from the Colts listed in the injury report, and maybe only a couple of those kind of slated to be more optimistic to play. The rest are kind of up in the air. So I doubt JT goes. That's going to be a pretty big blow. And then you might keep in mind, you're out several defensive starters. I mean, DeForest Buckner on the IR. You're down your 2 best corners, your 2 best edges. So overall, just a banged up group going into Jacksonville. We'll see. Let's just say I'm not the most confident, mainly because it's Jacksonville, and they've proven not to be able to win down there, even when they should. So definitely expecting it to be a frustrating day, and I hope they surprise me.
Me too. Once again, joined by friend of the program and Indianapolis sports diehard, Matt Murphy. So I'm glad you brought up the injuries, because here's kind of my thing. Chris Ballard, like him or not, has done a good job of building depth on both the offensive and defensive line. So the injuries up front, are they a matter of concern? Sure, but I trust the depth there. The secondary has been interesting, but the emergence of Jalen Jones, Nick Cross has played well. I trust Julian Blackman, Samuel Womack, filling in for Kenny Moore. Yeah. He was good last week. So I've seen, despite the injuries, I've seen guys kind of step up and hold their own at least. The big injury, though, is, of course, Jonathan Taylor, who I would be really surprised if he played on Sunday. He's got a high ankle sprain. They say it's mild. I don't know what that means. I've never even heard of that. Either way, as a running back, having to cut and do all those things, it's hard to do that on a sprained ankle. I do think we see Anthony Richardson play. He's practiced. I know it's been limited, but he's still out there throwing. He's in the meetings. Shane Steichen said earlier in the week that even if he didn't practice at all, if he'd been healthy on Sunday, then he was going to play him. And so I expect to see Richardson. My thing is, I compare Jonathan Taylor to a crock pot earlier in the show, because when I moved up here, I didn't know how to cook, right? But I could lean on the crock pot to make cooking easy.
Yeah.
And with Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor is his crock pot. He just makes everything easier. If he's not out there, who's the guy that you expect for the Colts, or for Anthony Richardson more of, to kind of lean on?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask, and I think you're right. He does make it easy, right, on Anthony. But I also would flip that and say that one of the best graded, if not the best graded, run offensive lines in the NFL make it easier on JT. And honestly, Anthony makes it easier on JT with his ability to run and just threat to run. He automatically takes an edge player on any handoff and has him at least waiting a split second to make sure he doesn't have the ball, like on a keeper or anything. So, it's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship across the board. So where certainly, again, JT is a great kind of crutch to lean on from the quarterback position. I do think maybe a Trey Sermon coming in can at least be more effective than Trey Sermon in years past because of those two factors, right? One less defender in the box, or at least in Trey Sermon's route, if one's going to be kind of taking care of making sure AR is not going to take it on a keeper. And then additionally, too, he's running behind one of the best O-lines in the league. So, I expect him to at least be competent for running the ball. And then honestly, I think Goodson gets some run on as a scat back on some third downs as well. He's not the best pass blocker, but certainly a good pass catcher. So despite his drop last year and to end the season,
not a great throw,
I think
to be
he is
fair.
a pretty good scat back. Yeah, it wasn't. I'm actually more team that was on Minshew than Goodson. But overall, I think they'll just kind of go by committee. Maybe you'll see a guy pulled up from the practice squad. Evan Hull would be a guy to keep your eye on, and in terms of somebody being called up and maybe getting some run. So we'll see. But again, I expect, league full of parity in Jacksonville. Maybe our O-line looks like the worst in the league, just because of, again, that's just what it is. It's like a disease down there, dude. It's crazy.
Well, good news in terms of the offensive line still looking good. Jags not going to have their fourth leading tackler, a linebacker, and no Josh Hines-Allen, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. So that's good. That makes me feel better about, as you said, what has already been one of the better offensive lines in the NFL, joined by good friend Matt Murphy talking Colts and Jags. The other thing that I'm waiting on, because I think it's going to happen at some point, the Adonai Mitchell breakout game, right? Like, he's been open on some deep balls that have been overthrown. He's had a couple drops. I'm waiting on this Adonai Mitchell explosion. And this Jags defense, they've given up more passing yards in the NFL than anyone not named the Vikings. What have you kind of thought of AD Mitchell? I know there's a lot of excitement about him coming into the year, and he hasn't really delivered on that yet. What have you kind of thought about him so far?
Yeah, it's been interesting. He's, I believe, leading the league in separation per route run. So he's really good at the line of scrimmage and his releases. He's gotten open. He's had a couple bad balls. I think he's been targeted 13 times and has 2 catches. I think when it's that big of a disparity, catch per target, it's honestly fault of both. So there certainly have been some plays where AD, he had a pretty big drop in Green Bay. A couple others where you just want him to at least act like he's trying to go get it, right? A couple 50-50 balls he just kind of gave up on. But certainly some routes that he ran that he's wide open. He honestly could have about 3 or 4 touchdowns at this point. Just some missed throws here and there. But yeah, it's kind of mixed bag feelings because you see the potential at the line of scrimmage with his releases. He gets a ton of separation, but you have to finish, right? And as a receiver, that's going to get the ball. And there's just been some times I feel like he's been a little bit hesitant at attacking or trying to go high point a ball that's maybe 50-50. So overall, yeah, I feel good. I do feel like he could have a breakout. You definitely want to see him look like he's efforting a little bit, especially on some of those 50-50 balls. So, but again, overall, whenever you're leading the league in anything at your position, as long as it's a positive stat, it's a good thing. So,
without a doubt, joined by good friend Matt Murphy talking Jags and Colts. I meant to ask you this earlier, and I skipped it because I don't know why. It just kind of happened. But if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, do you expect them to run Anthony Richardson more, despite coming off, this hip thing that he's got?
The Colts have been pretty bullish about. Again, you'll hear Steichen say like, "Hey, you're not going to take away Curry's shooting the 3, right? Like, we're not going to take away AR's legs." I do think it's an element where, okay, it's if it's happened enough, you got to calm down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In fairness to them, a lot of what they call is like, hey, whatever AR sees, if they're in base and they send that edge to go get the running back, right? We tell AR to keep it, right? That's just a read. It's not necessarily a play call.
Yeah.
They're not calling a ton of QB runs straight up. It's more of if the defense presents a look, they take it. I would expect them to do about what they've done. They honestly, AR hasn't run a ton, and would expect him to run about the same, just because, again, if it tells you anything, like they're certainly not going to be afraid of it. They dialed up a play where AR could keep it right after he got hurt, and obviously led to him being out for a game. So they're certainly not afraid of that. I would just expect it to be about the same. Definitely don't think it would be more, just given the circumstances, or at least hope it's not more overall. Because again, he not made of glass, but maybe plastic, and it's definitely a little nervous about that. I'm not gonna lie.
It definitely is. Last question for you, Matt, and I'll let you go. I told you off the air I was going to ask you about baseball, and I lied, because I was just reminded that there's this thing that happened in the NBA, and I haven't been able to talk to anybody about it. How does Karl Anthony Towns, now playing for the Knicks, how does that impact your view of the Pacers this year and their chances of potentially another deep playoff run?
Yeah, no, great question. I was shocked, to say the least. They have made a lot of moves, obviously bringing on Bridges. I think Mr. Tom T, and his coaching philosophy of playing like 7 players per game, they're going to maybe have to play 6. I mean, we're talking about one of they have just no depth at all. You look out their starting 5, and they've got no depth at all. So if they have a couple injuries, obviously OG Anunoby's dealt with some in his career. Like, if a couple of those guys go down, that's going to be honestly a below par team, just because they did give up a lot of depth, and don't really have a ton if you look at that roster. So overall, the Pacers are built kind of the opposite way, right? They've got 12 players that can play at any time. I think the acquisition of James Wiseman was a big one. He provides some flexibility at the 5, to where you don't, hey, Miles, foul trouble, or hey, maybe he goes down with an injury. You don't have to start Isaiah Jackson, who's more of a around the rim guy, whereas Wiseman can be, again, more of that stretch 5 for you and provide a little bit more athleticism from that position. So, and then overall, again, they're just deeper. I love their brand of basketball. We've talked about it before, but they're just a philosophy team. They're not necessarily we're going to run sets team. They more play with an offensive scheme and a mindset. And Rick Carlisle obviously has created a really good one that created a lot of issues for a lot of teams last year. So yeah, hopefully that continues. And honestly, I know a lot of people have really high hopes. And yeah, just keep your stars healthy. And a great way to do that is having a deep team and not having them play 45 minutes a night. So I think that's definitely in their favor. In terms of outlook on the the overall outlook of the Eastern Conference, I honestly would have them pegged as a top 4 seed. Obviously, if they could just continue and build on what they did last year, they were one of the most dangerous teams. Last year, they were missing Benedict Mathurin most of the end of the season and playoff run, so good to get him back. But yeah, overall, I have pretty high hopes for them, and think they really could do something special. I really like when teams that have this type of energy and vibe run it back and bring back everybody, and even add a couple pieces too. So yeah, I'm stoked. It seems like they got a lot of really good guys that build culture, and again, hopefully this is the start of something new for them, and we could really hop into some relevance when it comes to being a higher seed in the Eastern Conference for years to come.
Hopefully so, man. I'm excited for this year. Like you said, Mathurin back. Hopefully Walker can play some this year. Matt, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Yep. Pleasure, John. Appreciate you. Happy Friday.
You got it, man. Happy Friday. I'll see you. That's my guy, Matt Murphy, diehard Indianapolis sports fan, knows his stuff. Love having him on. When we come back here in about 3 minutes, the one and only Zack Gray is going to join to give you some weekend winning bets.
Often imitated, never duplicated. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thanks for Matt for joining me last segment. Joined now by the best sports gambler I know, Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. He's giving out information you need to help make the proper bets. Zack, what's going on, my man?
Jay Smith, happy Friday, brother. It is a beautiful day in Cincinnati, Ohio.
You might have muted yourself, my man. I can't hear you. Wait, Zack, you there?
I'm back.
Okay, we're good, dude. It's a beautiful day here. I haven't been able to wear my new Jordans because it's been wet, but it's finally dry. Pulled up today in the 11s. It's a great Friday, and I don't know about you. I'm so excited for this weekend. Tons of good games, just NFL, college football. I've got a college football bet that I love that I'd like to run by you, and then we can do as we always do. You can give me your one college football bet you love and the one NFL one that you love, and then we can kind of go off whatever from there. I love USC -8.5 on the road against Minnesota. I know Minnesota covered last week, but they played against a Michigan team that plays like a 1930s offense that doesn't know how to throw a forward pass. That is obviously not the case with Miller Moss and this USC offense. I like them to cover the 8.5.
First of all, I bet Michigan last week, and against my pure hatred for that organization and that program, and they were up 24-10 and just blew it. But anyway, back to USC. So my model has it about 8.9. So I don't really see too much value in it. Now, this is the type of game where, whoever dictates the way the game is played is who's going to cover. And I know that sounds silly, but there's no way that USC pulls away playing smash mouth football. Like, they're going to have to spread it out, throw the football. And there's no way that Minnesota keeps this close unless they keep this thing in a phone booth. So I could, you're banking on that offense opening up a little bit, Minnesota not being able to keep up. I don't think it's a bad play. My data just doesn't support it, but I definitely see the thought process there.
Okay, makes sense. Moving on to the NFL. All right, what's your one college football bet that you love this week?
I'm going to give you guys two this weekend. I'm going to give you one for tonight. There's a lot of UNLV hype, and rightfully so. They look like they're probably the group of five. Them and Boise State are probably the two top contenders for that playoff spot. But I think Fran Brown and Syracuse is just kind of a different animal than what they faced. I think they're obviously better than Kansas, who UNL beat by 3 on the 3 and in some soccer stadium and nowhere, Kansas. But I like Syracuse plus 6.5 tonight. I don't like Kyle McCord, but I think he is good when he is facing inferior competition. I don't know if Syracuse wins outright, but I do expect them to cover the 6.5. The data says somewhere around 2.5 or 3. That's an automatic play for me. And looking into it, I just think that Syracuse is a little too much firepower for a group of 5 team that, we can all say have proved themselves. But Jonathan, let's be real, like, they haven't really faced the test yet.
They haven't. You're exactly right. Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. You can follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine to get all the gambling information you need to make winning bets. Moving on to, what's your second bet? I'm so excited about the NFL, man. I don't know what I'm doing today.
We'll get to the NFL, but one more bet that it's an Iowa over for those wondering. I'll just spill the beans. It's Ohio State, Iowa over 44.5. And I think this is a low number, Jonathan. Like, I don't know if we know this, but Iowa's given up big plays all year. They gave up 21 points to Troy last night, who was struggling to score against Texas State. There's that defense can get leaky, especially on the pass. And I think we all have been introduced to the world of Jeremiah Smith.
Yes.
You still never answered me who the better Jay Smith was, but I think you were sick, but yeah. But
yeah. It's probably him. Just if I'm being honest, but
You're a better pickup basketball player, but no,
That's right.
I think is 38-10. Does that sound crazy? Like that
Yeah.
seems like such a reasonable score. And
It
like
does.
to think that it's going to be a slog, a 24-7, 21-4, like Ohio State's offense is the best that I've seen it since Ryan Day has been the head coach. This might be one of the worst defenses that I've seen Iowa have in recent years. And let's not forget, Ryan Day has played Iowa one other time in his career as the Ohio State football coach, and he scored 54 points on them. So, I don't understand this number, and the model agrees.
Okay, fair enough. So we like the Ohio State, Iowa over, and then we like Syracuse to cover tonight against UNLV.
And then a whole bunch of other plays for the weekend. So, go check out my Twitter and Patreon and see what you can cook up.
At ZG the Grapevine is that Twitter. Once again, joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. So now we can move to the NFL. I got to be honest. There's not one that I absolutely love, but I'm going to float one out there to you. The Jets on the money line against the Vikings in London. Those London games are weird. Everyone loves the Vikings right now. And I'm starting to kind of change my gambling habits a little bit. As opposed to going with what I think, I just fade the public because Vegas is way smarter than a lot of us, and people don't want to admit that. So I'm starting to fade the public more and more. This feels like a game where people look at the 4-0 undefeated Vikings who have just seamlessly dominated everyone. They look at the Jets who weren't very good against the Broncos. And like I said, the London games are weird. Jets show up and win that game.
You're starting to get it, Jay Smith. You're starting to pick it up. I promise, audience, this was not planned, but I was going to come on here and ask you what you thought about this game because I'll let you guys in behind the scenes. On Patreon, this is one of the games that I circled that I didn't know if I was going to place a bet on, but I really, really am leaning Jets +3 at least. I want it to get up to +3.5. I've been kind of holding out on it to see if I can get that key number of 3.5. But if I have to take it at 3, there's a good chance I will. And I couldn't agree more with you, Jay Smith. Your entire analysis was correct. The model actually has the Jets winning by 1.5. So what we're seeing here is an over-exaggeration. I know we talk every week and every game that I bring up, that I say this, there's some overreaction with the line. There's a preconceived notion of something, and that's why we use the data, right? We get through all of the bias, all of the media, so we get right down to the numbers, and this is exactly one of those games. So incredible call out.
Jeez, look at me. I'm figuring out between talking to you and there's a guy who goes on Dan's show. We call him the Sack Man. Like between listening to y'all, man, I'm like you said, I'm learning. What's the NFL play that you really like this weekend?
I like the Niners -7. Not because I don't think that the Cardinals are a good team or not because I think that I'm taking too much stock into them getting blown out by the Commanders. I just think it's one of those games where the 49ers kind of assert their will. They need to get going. They need to start to click. And I just think that there's too much there for the Cardinals to kind of take advantage of. And I think Debo's back, and I know that Mason is having a great year. And I like the Cardinals. Marvin Harrison's my guy. Kyler Murray's playing well, but it's just one of those things where it just seems like it's just too much data, too much pointing towards the Niners' direction. So I love -7. -7.5 can get a little tricky, with needing more than a touchdown. So if you can get a -7, get a -7. But I would even feel comfortable, -7.5. But I wouldn't go anywhere close to, 9 or 10 if it ever gets up there. I don't think it will, but just if it does, I'd stay away.
There you go. Joined by Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Check out the Patreon. He sells very important data to help you place winning bets, and he'll also give you his picks as well. So I'm gonna ask you one college football question. Jeez, Jonathan. And then from there, I want to talk playoff baseball because I know you love baseball, and I'm very excited to talk to you about that. But first, I have to ask you, I think Purdue. Who's the worst team in the Big Ten? Purdue or Northwestern? Because IU plays Northwestern on Saturday. They're only favored by 13.5, which feels criminally low. But at the same time, it's weird enough that I'm like, I'm not going to touch that because like it's a little wonky, kind of like Washington being favored over Michigan. I'm like, that line's so weird. I'm going to stay away. So just answer that however you want to.
Yeah, if in my heart of hearts, I still like kind of believe in Purdue. And not that I think they're like a bowl team or anything, but I do like I like the way they go about it, if that makes sense. Like, I think their coach has a little something, I think they have some players that can kind of pop. Northwestern, man, Jonathan, this is the toughest question I've been asked in like weeks about who the worst team in the Big Ten is. If I had to put my finger on it, I would say Northwestern. I think Purdue has a higher ceiling. That's how I'd answer that.
Okay, fair enough. I've got Purdue fans in the chat. They're just like, no, Purdue is hands down worse. I don't know, man. I'm with you. I think Purdue's ceiling's a little higher when you have a quarterback like they do at Northwestern who's only completing 58% of his passes. It's hard to be good at football.
He's worse than Cade McNamara. That's hard to do. That is hard to do. Once again, joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. You can get his Patreon in his bio. So, playoff baseball, we didn't play together for a year. Like, you didn't feel like my coach, but I guess that you were. So I love talking baseball with you. I've actually told some Coach Hooten and Mouse stories this week, which has been a lot of fun. Do you remember when we started 0-9 in conference my freshman year? Yes.
That was brutal. That was
not a good time.
I was talking about the Jags, and I was like, there's, some teams respond well, like the Reddies did that year, and then other teams fold. And so I was talking about that. That was not fun. Anyway, baseball's happening. I think, most excited for the Royals and Yankees series because I love Bobby Witt Jr. The summer after my freshman year, I played summer ball with a bunch of guys from Dallas who knew him, and they all called him overrated. And from that moment on, I'm like, that was the year he was drafted number 2 overall. And they were like, he only got drafted because of who his dad is. And I was like, I find that very hard to believe. And so from that moment, I'm just like, I want Bobby Witt Jr. to be awesome. And he has been. Probably won't win AL MVP. It's probably going to be Judge, but I would love it if he did. So that's the series I'm looking forward to. Which one do you kind of have circled?
Yeah. Well, since I am the betting guy, I am looking at the Philly series. I had a future on them to win the NL this year and win the pennant. But I am interested in the Royals and the Yankees, just because it feels like the Yankees have that monkey on their back. Are they going to get over the hump, right? Like, oh, we hear all about all their stars, and boy, are they, that middle of the lineup is insane. Like, I know we know that, but I think you guys need to head over to Baseball Reference and just look at some OPS pluses of the middle of their order, and you'll go, who else can win? Like, that's how good their lineup is. But then you have the Royals, right? Like, Bobby Witt Jr. is a stud. Cashed a future on his hit on MLB leading hits, by the way. My MLB futures popped off, by the way. I didn't really promote those too much, but so yeah, I would say either the Phillies or the Yankees or the Royals. And I think we're going to go into another offseason where we're asking ourselves, why do we believe in the Yankees? Because I think the Royals are a more cohesive team. And I know that's kind of a cliche thing, but at the end of the day, when it comes to baseball, especially playoff baseball, it's who's hot, who's together, because it's going to be times where there's adversity and some teams crumble, some teams don't. And it always feels like the team that wins the baseball series or the game is the one that stuck it out and played every single pitch as hard as they could. And I think the Royals do that better than the Yankees, but the Yankees have the talent.
Without a doubt, joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler, also former professional baseball player. Let's throw that in there, considering that we are talking baseball right now. I love divisional matchups in the playoffs. Like, there's always just something a little extra there. It's like Padres and Dodgers. There'll be something a little extra there. Tigers, Guardians. Like, that's the AL Central, which I still can't believe that the Tigers made the playoffs. They're one of the best stories in baseball right now, really, just in sports in general. And so I'm excited for both those. I'll be honest, though, this Padres-Dodgers series, like you talk about stars, like they're just everywhere. Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani's coming off, one of the best seasons in the history of baseball at the plate. You've got Machado and Tatis, and like there's dudes everywhere for that series. And Padres-Dodgers is always fun to watch. What are kind of your feelings on those two series?
I want to see – I'm a big Fernando Tatis guy. I want to see him come back into the national spotlight. I feel like he's been a little bit of forgotten lately, right? Like he hasn't had like the crazy seasons. I think he is talented and good enough to be on that Judge, Ohtani, Soto level where it's like those are the faces of baseball. And I'm looking forward to him to kind of be on that national stage again with all of the stuff from his past kind of behind him and in the rear view. And just to see him come to the light again. Do I think they're going to win the series? No, but so biasly, I want Tatis to shine. I mean, is anyone going to touch the Dodgers or the Phillies in the NL? Like, honestly,
I don't know. See, that's the best thing about baseball, in my opinion. Like we play 162 games. We have a couple teams that win 100 or 98 games or whatever, and then we walk into the postseason and we think it's like football and basketball where like the regular season, like you learn stuff and like you kind of do. But like, let's be honest, the Diamondbacks won 87 games last year and they won the NL. Like it's really about who gets hot at the right time, which is part of what makes the playoffs so great. But in terms of talent and ability and kind of what we expect, I would agree that the Phillies and the Dodgers do feel just a cut above everyone else.
And I think they have that extra gear. I mean, the Phillies have that, DNA now. Like they've gone through it a couple times. They know what it's like. Same with the Dodgers. Like I know we all joke about them, choking or whatever, but I don't care what you say. When you are that dominant throughout a stretch run, like what it takes. Now it's a matter of doing it, but those two teams have been there, done that. So I don't know if it's going to be a thing of they're going to waver or they're going to flinch. So that's why I kind of put them a cut above along with their talent, obviously. But it's just one of those things where, yeah. And also, Jay Smith, I'm going to say it. I might rattle the cage here. The playoff system in baseball is broken. I hate it so much.
Really?
Yeah, I hate it. I think it's so stupid.
You think they should all be best of 7? Is that
yes.
where you're going?
Yes, you just said it. They play 162 games, and we are in baseball is this big sample size game where everything is long term, over 10 games, last 10 games, all like that's how it's always been, and that's how it's marketed. And so you're going to shrink the sample size down to 2 or 3 games and decide who's in the DS. Like we have to be better there because it's not good for the end product when teams that worked all year to get to the point where they're in the playoffs can have and baseball's super unlucky, just like I do. Like baseball, like we should try to take as much variance out of the playoffs as possible. That's why we do play long series in sports to try to take that variance out, and I think they're doing a bad job with this wild card round, and I think it needs to change.
Yeah, I completely agree. Joined by Zack Gray, professional sports gambler. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine to get access to some of his bets. Check out the Patreon for all the data that you need to make good bets and to see all of his bets as well. Also, former professional baseball player. So you texted me earlier today. 2 more questions, and I will let you go. You said that you had a basketball rule change that's a little out there that you wanted to pitch. I don't know what it is, but I'm very intrigued.
All right. So this can be applied to both college basketball and the NBA, but I think it would be more beneficial in college basketball. So how late in games, especially in the tournament, we always complain about foul calls and key guys fouling out, things like that. What if instead of fouling guys out, what if after the 5th foul, it was like a power play for like 2 minutes where you had to play 4-on-5?
Oh man, that'd be interesting.
That fixes key players being eliminated completely from a game that's close late in the game. And it also gives the other team the adequate advantage to that person fouling more than the allotted fouls. It's the perfect solution. And I know in the NBA it might not work. You don't really have too much foul trouble in the NBA like consistently like college basketball. But if you're not going to raise the foul limit, put a power play in college basketball, watch the game skyrocket.
That'd be, oh man. Like I'm trying to think. Like imagine, just going back to last year, Purdue's playing whoever, Zach Edey, foul number 5, 2 minutes. Purdue's got to play 4-on-5 with no Zach Edey. Like that would just be.
But you're getting him back. But you're getting him back.
You do. But those 2 minutes, I don't mind it. I have to really think about it. But on the surface level, I don't mind it at all. I think that'd be entertaining, and that's what sports are, right? Like they're supposed to be entertaining. And
it fixes a big problem. It would fix a huge problem in college basketball.
It would. I don't mind it. I like it. So, okay. Before I let you go. So on Fridays, as you know, I usually do this segment called Fun List Friday. And I got a request from great listener John Buzzard. He was like, for Fun List Friday, will you do like just the best baseball playoff moments of all time?
Ooh.
And originally I was like, yes. But then I realized like everyone's list is the same when it comes to that. So instead of doing that, I've got multiple guests on today that I know enjoy baseball. So instead, I would like to ask you, what is your personal favorite? Not like it doesn't have to be like one of the famous ones. What is a personal favorite baseball playoff moment that you've witnessed in your lifetime?
Wow. The first one that came to mind, and I was really young, was the Edgar Renteria single for the Marlins to win the World Series.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be one. And then I'll give an honorable mention. Least favorite was the Buster Posey grand slam against the Reds.
Yeah, that's. Oh man, I figured you would go straight Reds because or some sort of like Joey Votto moment. But
we haven't won. I have not seen a Reds playoff series win in my life.
Is that? Oh, that's crazy. I'm sorry. That's probably more traumatic than anything that I asked you that question.
No, so honestly, the Buster Posey thing came to mind first because I was literally there and my soul was ripped out of me forever. I haven't been the same since. But and then I pivoted and I was like, I don't want to do the Griffey rounding third or David Freese or like Rajai Davis home run like that. Like I feel like those are basics. So I picked one out of the memory bank.
Okay, if I remember correctly, the Buster Posey grand slam happened in Cincinnati, right?
Can I paint a picture real quick? Do I have time?
Of course, yeah.
We oh man, I'm gonna cry. We go into San Francisco in a 5-game series and win both games. We're up 2-0. We have won 2 road games. All we have to do is come back home and win a game, and we are in the championship series, Jonathan. And boy, oh boy, did we lose 3 straight at home, capped off by that grand slam off Matt Latos late in the game. My boy Joey Votto, no show. Jay Bruce strikes out to end the game. It was really bad, not because it killed the season, but because of the events that transpired prior to that, with us being up 2-0, going all the way across the country and winning 2 games on the road. It is the quintessential pain point of any Cincinnati Reds fan between the ages of 20 and 30. It is a heartbreaker. It will never be forgotten, and it is a curse until we win a playoff series.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Last thing for real, and I'll let you go. Which crowd quieted faster? Cincinnati that night when Posey hit the home run, or Brewers Stadium last night when Pete Alonso hit the 3-run shot in the top of the 9th?
Oh man, that Brewers crowd.
They went silent. Like it's so quick.
Yeah, I would say the Brewers. The Reds thing was a buildup, and there was a lot of boos and anger. The Brewers was just stunning.
It really was. I had the Brewers last night as well, and that did not cash. I was so frustrated. I was like, I turned the game off. I was like, we're good. I'm going to make my
Polar bear.
money here at some point. And then the frickin' polar bear had to do what the polar bear does. Zach, thanks for your time, as always. I meant to write your bets down, but I think I remember them. You like the 49ers on Sunday, -7. If you get it at 7.5, that's fine too. You like the over in the Ohio State-Iowa game on Saturday, and tonight you like Syracuse to cover the 6.5.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good, Zach. Thanks for your time, man.
Yep. See you later.
See ya. That is the one and only Zack Gray. Follow him on Twitter at ZG the Grapevine. Great dude. Gives out a lot of winning bets. Gives out a lot of valuable information. Coming up, 10 minutes, Eddie White of the Pacers and Fever is going to join me. But before that, Colts, Jags, I'm going to talk about that a little bit when we come back here in about 3 minutes.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice Friday. I know I am. Just great show. Still have, an hour left going until 1 o'clock today. No Dan Dockett show. So hopefully I'm supplying you with your fill of sports talk for the day, for the Friday. And I would very much like, to supply you with your fill of bourbon and food. Join me, Dan Dockich, and the rest of the Indy Sports Ticket crew on Saturday, October 26th at Back 9 for Bourbon and Birdies presented by Payless Liquors. If you don't know what Back 9 is, imagine just a better version of Top Golf. You can get your all-in ticket on IndySportsTicket.com. That all-in ticket gets you unlimited bourbon, unlimited food samples, and you get an hour in a bay to knock around some golf balls. Heaven Hill, the official bourbon of Bourbon and Birdies, will be on hand. Also, Birdie Brown Straight Wheat Whiskey and Tom Bullock's Burnt Orange Bourbon will be there as well. A portion of the proceeds, will go to helping veterans and families. Get your tickets right now. See a full list of the bourbons and the food at IndySportsTicket.com. This is an event that you do not want to miss. Something else that you don't want to miss is Eddie White, who's set to join me at noon. That's coming up here in about 8 minutes or so. Oh, man, Sunday, Colts taking on the Jags. Jonathan Taylor not ruled out yet. I don't think we're going to see him on Sunday. He didn't practice yesterday. He didn't practice at all on Wednesday. Anthony Richardson, meanwhile, he's been a limited participant. I am so intrigued to see what Shane Steichen's going to do with this Colts offense without Jonathan Taylor. Okay, as we all know, Jonathan Taylor has been, the main source of offense for this Colts team really all year. He definitely has been in these last 2 games, of which the Indianapolis Colts won. Okay, he is an important part of the offense. He's a guy that Anthony Richardson can lean on. And when you look at the best offenses in the NFL, like obviously they all have good quarterbacks, but they also have a non-quarterback that offense can lean on, right? Like for the Chiefs, like they can lean on Travis Kelce when they really need a first down. The Vikings can go to Justin Jefferson whenever they need, a big play to happen. The Texans can go to Nico Collins, who's currently on pace for a 2,000-yard receiving season, which we've never seen before. So it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting dynamic that's going to, be part of this Jags game. Because as of right now, based off all the reporting that we have, it seems like we're going to see Anthony Richardson, but not Jonathan Taylor. That game, Sunday, 1 o'clock, down in the House of Horrors that is Jacksonville. So when we come back here in about 5 minutes, the great Eddie White is set to join the show. We're going to talk Pacers. We're going to talk Fever, and who knows what else is going to come up in our conversation. That interview is coming your way here in about 5 minutes.
a chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
You must think I'm dumb.
You'll probably beat up in the bus stop most of the time.
Playoffs? You kidding me?
That's a clown question, bro.
Shut your yap.
Down goes Frazier.
I can say anything I want. That's the beauty of this country.
This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game.
What do you care? You were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
Would call pass plays. Block.
In my entire adult life, I've never used the expression game face.
You believe in miracles?
Say hi to your mom for me.
There will be some people inconvenienced, and if it happens to be their fat little girlfriends, too bad.
This is the Dan Dockett Show on Indy Sports Tickets, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app. Here's Dan.
What's going on? It's the Dan Dockett Show. Producer Jonathan filling in for him today. Hope you guys are having a great Friday. I know I am. Just wrapped up the Real Jonathan Smith Show, rolling right into the Dan Dockett Show. And to open the show, we're starting with just an absolute awesome guest. Eddie White joins the show. Eddie, how are you, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Good afternoon. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing so great. I'm so glad to have you on because there's a question that I've just been dying to ask you, and I wanted to ask you on the air. So before you worked for the Pacers and the Fever, you worked for the Miami Dolphins. I am a huge Dolphins fan, have been my whole life. I'm just curious to know, when did you work for them, and do you have any great stories from your time down there in Miami?
Well, as Dan always says, some of the best stories are the ones you can't tell on the radio, and some I can't even never tell in public. But I was there seasons. Let me get this right now. Seasons 87, 88, 89, I think. Worked at Notre Dame and then went to the Dolphins and was there 3 seasons. And then obviously that was Coach Shula, that was Marino, Duper, Cailtin, that era. And then moved to Indianapolis, worked for Logo 7, Logo Athletic, and then we became part of Puma, Reebok, and Adidas. Then did the radio show with Kravitz, and then helped on the host committee for the Super Bowl. And then, I don't know, 12, 13 years later or ago, I came to work for the Pacers Sports Entertainment. But I enjoyed working with Coach Shula. I mean, I went from Lou Holtz to Don Shula, I think two of the greatest football coaches that the sport of football has ever seen. I learned a lot under both of them. Proud that Coach Shula remains today still the winningest coach in the history. And remember, Don Shula coached many, many seasons with 14-game seasons, and only like a couple teams made the playoffs. There was no wild cards back then. And then eventually we got to 16 games. But now you got 17, 18, and 8,000 wild cards. I mean, these coaches today have a lot more opportunities to win games. But and the beauty of Don Shula was, he would win with a running game one year, and then he'd win with a passing game the next year. So I believe he's the greatest coach that's ever coached football. And then I also believe that Lou Holtz is in the top 5 of the greatest collegiate coaches of all time because he won at every school that he ever worked at, whether it was William and Mary or Arkansas or Minnesota or South Carolina, or, and of course, the University of Notre Dame. So I'm very, very lucky to have worked with those two guys.
Is there a saying or a nugget that they ever gave you about coaching or just sports in general that you feel like still rings true today?
Well, I don't know if it's a saying, but people ask me, what did like the great coaches that you work with? And again, remember, when I was at Reebok, we worked with all of the NFL teams, all the NBA teams, and I was specifically NFL. So I worked closely with, the Mike Holmgrens, the Bill Belichick's of the world. And when I compare Coach Shula and Coach Holtz, the things that they had in common were not only were they both from the great state of Ohio, the two things that Holtz and Shula did is they were tough to work for. They demanded excellence out of you, whether you were the equipment guy, the PR guy, the marketing guy, a receptionist, or you're their quarterback. But they never, ever asked more of you than they asked of themselves. And they weren't phonies. They were straightforward, and they held people accountable. And I think sometimes when I see watch these teams that maybe don't do as well as we think, and you see things that happen, I think sometimes that those coaches, the coaching today, maybe don't have those skills that Coach Shula and Coach Holtz had. Now, I do realize that the times have changed. The athletes have changed. What you can do in 1986, maybe you cannot do in 2024. But I think there's something to the skills. Some things do carry over, and it's holding people accountable and seeking greatness, pushing people to their limit. But don't be a phony. Make sure you're pushing yourself. And nobody worked harder at their craft than Don Shula and Lou Holtz.
That's great. That's great. Joined by Eddie White, who works for the Fever and the Pacers. And since you work for the Fever, you know that I have to ask you about Caitlin Clark. I think that most people that watched her this year and the WNBA were pretty new to women's basketball. And I'm curious to know, is it normal for the WNBA to wait this long to release the Rookie of the Year award?
I don't know. I think they release different awards, during their postseason. I have no idea if they have a specific order that, MVP comes out first or whatever. I think, and you've seen it with other sports, they stagger them because you want to get the PR hit. I mean, it's an old PR trick and that makes sense. But when they release Rookie of the Year versus Defensive Player of the Year versus MVP or whatever, I don't think it matters. I understand that they do it during the postseason to kind of keep the buzz going on those off days when maybe there isn't a playoff game. But in this case, they could have announced it probably with 2 weeks left in the season. I don't think anybody would have said it's a wrong selection, or they could have waited another 3 months and said, "Oh, by the way, Rookie." This to me was a flat out no brainer. What she did was incredible, was remarkable, was extraordinary. She did things that no rookie has ever done before, and she's obviously well deserving of the award.
She obviously does it. Were you surprised that she wasn't unanimously voted the Rookie of the Year?
Yes, yes, I was. I know some of the talking heads on ESPN said they were not, which and then I think it was Rebecca Lobo who, quite frankly, said, "Well, it's a great rookie class, and there are a lot of great players, a lot of great rookies who had great rookie seasons." Okay, I would if the people would listen when these analysts say things and actually listen to their answers and follow up, I'd say, wait a minute, the award is not for most rookie class or best rookie performance in your opinion. This is who is the best rookie of the year. This is a slam dunk. I cannot show you a blue card and a gold card and say what, and hold up the blue card and say, "What color is this?" And you go, "It's red." No, it's blue. I mean, my opinion is it's red. Well, your opinion is red, but it's wrong. This is a blue card. Anyone who is neutral, who has just a little bit of basketball sense, looked at the numbers, watched the season. This lady was the Rookie of the Year by far. For someone to give it to Angel Reese, and this is what drives me crazy. The Chicago team made the playoffs last year. They added Angel Reese, who's a phenomenal rebounder. She's a wonderful basketball player. I mean that. They also added Cardoso, who is fantastic. Another great rookie, another winner from college who's come in and made the W great. Okay. Added two great rookies on a team that made the playoffs a year ago. Okay. They don't make the playoffs this year. Okay. Here, I have a Fever team that hadn't made the playoffs in years. I mean, years. They add this rookie who does things that in some games no rookie's ever done. In a couple of games, no player has ever done, and leads her team into the playoffs. Now, you tell me, who is the Rookie of the Year? It's not about, my opinion. Your opinion is wrong. And I tweeted this yesterday. I shouldn't be shocked because as an old person who loves baseball, to think over the years, Nolan Ryan, George Brett, Derek Jeter, Willie frickin' Mays, Cal Ripken, those guys had people that didn't vote for them as a first ballot Hall of Famer. Those morons and the person who didn't vote for Cailtin should lose their voting privileges because you're not taking it seriously, or you have an agenda, or you flat out don't know the sport.
Yeah, I said the same thing earlier today, joined by Eddie White, who works for the Fever and the Pacers, talking Caitlin Clark not being the unanimous Rookie of the Year. I said the same thing earlier today. It's like, look, if you're a journalist, and most of the people who have votes are, your job is to be neutral. And if you voted for Angel Reese, then like you said, you either don't know the sport or you're not neutral and you're pushing some sort of agenda. It's frustrating. It's annoying, but I wasn't surprised. This is kind of what I figured would happen. Not because Angel Reese, was better than Cailtin, but just because of how the WNBA has operated this year and just kind of how it's been covered. There's been some pettiness to say the least, but that season's over. We're like 2 weeks away from Pacers basketball, which I love. I love the NBA. Like, I'm going to watch League Pass in October because I'm just a loser, and I love this stuff so much. They're coming off of this Eastern Conference Finals run that was just so entertaining and so great to watch. What do you think is a fair expectation for them this year?
Well, I like the fact, just, the talking to some of the guys at media day. I love it that they're taking it. The feedback from Joe Fan as well. It was a fluke, and I love it when a team has a chip on its shoulder, when they have something to strive for. And I think if you looked at how hard they worked in the offseason, and I credit Kevin Pritchard, Chad Buchanan, the guys who put the team together. But it was Pritchard 2 years ago said something, and I'm like, holy! I saw him the other day in the hallway. I said, you were so right. He said that this locker room. This is 2 years ago. He said this. In all his years of basketball, he had never seen a locker room this tight, this close, and it was real. And I said, I started thinking, back to my days at Notre Dame. At the Dolphins, when I was at Reebok, where I worked with every team. I'm in every locker room for every NFL team at least once. And I never saw a team so close where they genuinely liked each other. Usually a team has these one or two idiots on a team, two goofballs, right?
Yeah.
There's none. And they genuinely pull for each other and care for each other. There's something to that. And I think that allowed them to get to there's other things happen, but you got to play the freaking games. And you got to win them that got to the Eastern Conference Final. What I think hurt us in the Eastern Conference Final is that one guy on our team who's just a killer, who doesn't care who you are, is going to go up against you. We missed him, and that was Mathurin. And Mathurin has worked so freaking hard, and we're seeing it in the first couple of days of training camp. This kid is destined to have a breakout season. And if he has that, and we stay healthy, there's no reason we can't be back in the Eastern Conference Finals. But what the beauty of all this is, it's a style we play, and I credit Rick Carlisle, the Hall of Fame coach, to be. It's a fun team. It's an exciting team. If I heard one thing all last season, when I go around, I go to golf tournaments, schmooze, and all this stuff, is people said, oh, my God, I love your Pacers team. They're fun to watch. The games are great. And then we come up this summer with the women's team that people say, oh, my God, I love the Fever games, the energy, the excitement. They're fun to watch. Basketball, for our men and our women professionally in this state, maybe has never been better, has never been hotter. And we're coming off this phenomenal Pacers season, a phenomenal Fever season, and now let's come right back with the Pacers. I mean, remember, in 49 states, brother, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana.
That's exactly right. And I'm so glad that you brought up Mathurin. I talked about him yesterday, and I hate when he got hurt last year because it felt like he was on the verge of just kind of breaking out, just because like you said, like he's an absolute bulldog. Like he plays hard, he defends, the effort's always there, but like it just felt like his scoring ability, especially his shooting, had just kind of gone up a level, and then obviously he gets hurt. I'm glad to hear that the first couple of days back in practice have been good. I'm curious about Tyrese Halliburton because whenever guys come back, like all these different stories break, and apparently he's put on more muscle. Is that true? Like, can you tell?
Yes, you can't tell. I mean, I think one of the beauties for Halliburton was that tenure with Team USA, and listen, Halliburton didn't go to the big school. He wasn't the big recruit. Tyrese is a very smart individual. His parents did a wonderful job of making that man into not only the athlete that he is, but let's talk about the gentleman off the court. The way he handles himself, his relationships with people, the courteousness, the kindness, and the smartness. And he was smart enough. And let me make a comparison. I'll get back to this. Peyton Manning every year would go to the Pro Bowl. If I was at Reebok, I'd be at the Pro Bowl. And what did Peyton Manning do during the day? Did he go play golf after? They always had a morning practice in the Pro Bowl. And, the AFC and NFC are together at the same hotel. And most of the guys go play golf in the afternoon. No, what did Peyton Manning do? Peyton Manning sat at the pool bar, and he bought drinks all afternoon for all of the defensive players, Urlacher, Ray Lewis, NFC, AFC. He schmoozed them. He got to know them. He was so brilliant because he knew the next year when Urlacher's coming in to maybe kill him, he's not going to kill him so much. He's just going to hit him a little bit. Peyton Manning was very, very smart. He listened. He took notes. He schmoozed. Well, Halliburton's now out of Team USA, and he's cuddling up to these guys who have the rings, who have the glory, who've attained the greatness in the league. And he's learning, how do you do this? How do you handle that? What do you do here? What do you do there? That is freaking valuable. I don't care if he played 1 minute in the Olympics. That tenure with them is going to help. First of all, it now spreads the word around the league among the greats. Holy smokes, this guy in Indiana is the real freaking deal. But then he comes back here as our leader, and he uses those skills to help make our team better. Man, I'm telling you. And you talk to any coach, you got to put the ball in the hoop. And you got to play defense. I get that. But there's so many variables that go into having a team that can compete. Health, obviously, is number one, and talent. But that can go in and compete and get to your maximum level. Can you maximize what you got? We start our conversation talking about Lou Holtz and Don Shula. They did that better than anybody. I think Rick Carlisle does that. But you have to have the talent. As the great Slick Leonard always said, I ain't never seen no jockey carry a horse across the finish line. You got to have the hosses. Well, I think we got some hosses, and I think we got a secretariat that's leading us, and I cannot wait to get this season started.
I can't either. We're only a couple weeks away, joined by Eddie White, who works for the Pacers and the Fever. So with really both the Fever and the Pacers, both teams are incredibly young. Like, what's it like just being around, not kids per se, but it feels like there's a lot of people or a lot of players that are like early to mid 20s. What's it like just being around such a young group of athletes every day?
Well, I think, it's so funny. They were giving TJ McConnell a hard time the other day at Media Day. All the young players called, remember you saw the clip with it was Obi that said, hey, I have a question for TJ. Is this your 30th year in the league or something like that? And, they give him a hard time. But you have to have that KG seasoned veteran in that locker room. I think Siakam is the adult in that room, too. And then because then they teach the young bucks how to be a professional. Unlike football, where guys come into the National Football League and they played 3 years at Auburn or, 4 years at a smaller school. Those 3 years, they help you mature. You're learning how to be disciplined, with taking classes and studying for exams and practicing and whatever. In our sport, all these guys are playing 1 year in college and coming out, so they are younger. They're not even 21, and so that it's really important to have people in that locker room that can show them how you be a professional. How you carry yourself. And then now for those of us, especially me, who are old, hanging out with, or not hanging out, but that's terrible. But, being associated around with a team like that, even the Fever players too, it almost makes you feel younger. You get a pep in your step. I mean, going work in the Fever games this year was a blast. I mean, I couldn't wait to get down here to Gamebridge because you knew you were going to see something special and something exciting. And we saw that all winter long last year with the Pacers. I couldn't wait to get to the games because we had this exciting group of guys who really cared about each other, who were fun to watch. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they were winning freaking games. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. And so, I've been in this sports world for 100 years. And, the one thing that doesn't change is the enthusiasm and the energy that the young athletes bring to the table, whether that be at University of Notre Dame, the Miami Dolphins, the Indiana Fever, or the Indiana Pacers.
Joined by Eddie White, now working for the Fever and the Pacers via the QC Kinetics hotline. So speaking of energy, and you told me off the air that you watched the Mets and the Brewers last night, playoff baseball, like the energy in those stadiums is just different, so different from the regular season. How do you kind of feel about the playoffs? Is there a certain divisional series that you're looking forward to, or how do you plan on just watching the playoffs this year?
Well, I'm scared to death that we got to play the Mets because the Mets have been the most fun team to watch in baseball the last half of the regular season. There's something magical about the sport of baseball where a team gets hot. I mean, look at the Detroit Tigers. I guess I should mention them too when I mentioned the Mets, the team being hot since the second half of the season. But the Detroit Tigers were dead in the water. I mean, I think it was 0.9% of making the postseason, and here they are moving on. It's the beauty of baseball. They're the Mets that play 2 games, on Monday, a game on Tuesday, a game on Wednesday, a game on Thursday. It's like, and it's magical. And the last couple of years we've seen 100-win teams get knocked out. I think the challenge for teams like the Phillies and the Yankees and the Dodgers is you play every day since there was snow on the ground back in March and April. And you go through this long year playing every day, and now you're sitting around looking at each other for 5-6 days, haven't played a game. You can do all the scrimmages you want. You can split the squad and play split squad games, but that's not playing a real game. And I think we've seen the last couple of years teams that you might say were the better team got knocked out. Who would have thought that those 2 teams would have been the World Series last year? That's going to be one of those questions 2 years from now, saying who played and who won the 2003 World Series. People aren't going to get it right. They're not going to remember that it was the Texas Rangers in Arizona. They're not going to remember that. Really? They did? Yeah. But that's the beauty of baseball. And I think all these series are going to be fun to watch. I think it comes down to pitching, as it always does. That's why I don't think the Yankees get there. I don't think the Dodgers get there. I do think the Phillies have the pitching advantage over the Mets. Obviously I root for the Phillies, so I want them to win the World Championship. I remember like it was yesterday, as a young fan in Pennsylvania in 1980, when Pete Rose came into Philadelphia and he taught my Phillies team, a team that had Mike Schmidt and Larry Bowen, Greg Luzinski and Gary Maddox and Bob Boone and Tug McGraw and Steve Carlton, all these great players. They didn't know how to win, but it was Pete Rose that came in, played first base, and taught the Phillies how to win and led them to our first World Championship. And hopefully Bryce Harper can lead us to our 3rd World Championship.
You're telling me. I love Bryce Harper. Loved him ever since he came in the league. He's just been awesome. Like, very entertaining. He's been great for baseball. I'm a Cubs fan that they obviously didn't make it. I'm pulling for the Phillies just because I love Bryce Harper so much. Last question for you, Eddie, and I'll let you go. So usually on Fridays, I do this segment called Fun List Friday, and someone asked me to put together a list of just the best baseball moments ever. But I feel like all of those lists are the same. And so I wanted to ask all the guests that I've had on today, is there a specific special baseball playoff moment that you remember?
Well, for me, it being little was when Tug McGraw struck out the last batter and threw his hands up in the air, and Bob Boone came out and they hugged each other, and the Phillies won that 1980 World Series. But to me, as someone who's worked in sports forever, I always tell people, look it up. I will always maintain that the greatest baseball series, at least that I saw with my eyes, and it was the 1980 National League Championship Series between the Phillies and the Houston Astros. I believe 4 of the 5 games, it was a best of 5 then. Yes, best of 5 for National League Championship Series. 4 of the 5 games went extra innings. And in the final game, game 5, which I believe was in Houston, Nolan freaking Ryan had the lead in the 7th or 8th inning in Houston. And the Phillies came back and won that game. And I'm not sure if we won that one extra innings or if that went 9. But if you just look at the box scores from I think it was 1980 National League Championship Series, Astros, Phillies, 4 of the 5 in extra innings. That series, you can bottle it up and say, man, that was fantastic. But I was fortunate to, see games in Old Yankee Stadium, New Yankee Stadium, where remember they had the All-Star game in Yankee Stadium when Hamilton was hitting balls that almost went out of Yankee Stadium for home run derby at the All-Star game. I saw that one. Saw games at Old Shea Stadium, Veterans Stadium, Camden Yards. I've seen All-Star games when Bo Jackson broke his bat in the All-Star game out in, I think it was Anaheim or San Diego. So a lot of great baseball memories, but the one is obviously when the Phillies won that 80 World Series, but that 80 National League Championship Series, because again, the heartbreak of the, I know we got to go, but the heartbreak of the Milwaukee Brewer fans last night and today, I feel so closely to that because before Pete Rose came in 1980 to help the Phillies win, we had a couple opportunities. We had this great team, and we could never get to the to the World Series. And finally, we had the last game, ninth inning. We're up a run over the Dodgers at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. We are 3 outs away from going to the World Series, and we get the first out, the second out. We're now 1 out away from going to World Series, and the Dodgers pinch hit a guy who gets a single or a triple. And they pinch hit a guy who gets a single, ties the thing. Bill Russell gets a hit. They score. Phillies go meekly down 1-2-3, bottom of the ninth. The Dodgers go on to play the New York Yankees in the World Series. So I feel the heartbreak that the Brewers fans are feeling this morning. That's what makes that 1980 World Series championship so much better.
That makes sense. That's awesome. Those are some great stories, Eddie. Thanks for your time, man.
All right, man. Be good. God bless.
Yep. See ya. That is the great Eddie White, works for the Fever and the Pacers. A lot of stories, which are always so much fun to hear. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, we're going to get into a little bit of IU basketball. Mike Woodson made some comments yesterday at Big Ten Media Days that I'd like to address. We'll get into those when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Back to the Dan Dockett Show, presented by Moondrops Distillery on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. This is not the Real Jonathan. I'm burping. This is not the Real Jonathan Smith Show. This is the Dan Dockett Show. The Real Jonathan Smith Show wrapped up earlier today. This is producer Jonathan filling in for Dan as he's down in Georgia, just doing some important things. But Mike Woodson was in Chicago yesterday for Big Ten Media Days, and, he had to sit at the podium and answer some questions and all those things. And, he talked a little bit about the transfers and how he's excited for this year and how summer workouts have gone well and all that stuff, which is cool. It's nice to learn about. But really what we want to know is, how does Mike Woodson feel about the current state of the Indiana basketball program? And he was asked about that yesterday. He was asked, how do you feel about the current state of the basketball program compared to where you won it and compared to where it was when you played? And here's what Mike Woodson had to say about that.
I mean, I think we took a step backwards last year by not making the tournament, and that was kind of disappointing. But again, we got to move forward. The first 2 years, a lot of those guys hadn't been in the tournament for 5 years, and then they tasted it a little bit. At the end of the day, along with these guys, it's about winning Big Ten titles and winning national titles. That's why I came back, and I remember the good days back when I played, and some of the great years that Bob Knight had at Indiana that, it's been missing. And to be back and I'm able to, put my stamp on it, it's going to be great for me. I mean, I'm happy to be back, but we still got a long way to go as a ball club.
That was Mike Woodson. He sure sounds happy to be back. Jeez, look, let's start with the good stuff here. I appreciate Mike Woodson talking about wanting to win Big Ten titles and national titles, because that is the standard of success at Indiana, right? He was there when he was, he played for Bob Knight. Like he knows that. Here's my thing. It's year number 4. And to hear him say that the ball club still has a long way to go is a little concerning. In year 4, the ball club should not have a long way to go. It should be rolling right now. It should have been rolling last year. Not making the NCAA tournament wasn't, as, Mike Woodson put it, a little disappointing. No, it wasn't a little disappointing. It was unacceptable. It's year 3. You were a 4 seed the year prior in the tournament. Like, I appreciate that Mike Woodson says that he knows what the standard is, and he talked about winning titles and all these things. But come on now. It's year 4. You can't be, saying that your ball club has, a ways to go. Like, IU should be close to, no, they shouldn't be close to. They should be a title contender, right? And it feels like they aren't even close to that. Like, when I think about Indiana basketball, like, they are projected to finish second in the Big Ten this year. That means that they're going to be pretty good. But, like, why doesn't it feel that way? Like, when I look at Purdue, they're losing Zach Edey, back-to-back National Player of the Year. Okay, arguably the most dominant force we've ever seen in college basketball. I should look at Purdue in this upcoming basketball season and feel as if they're going to take a step back. I should feel as if they aren't going to be as good. I do not feel that way. And part of that is because I have an immense amount of faith in Matt Painter to continue on, building that program and continuing to be at the forefront of the college basketball world. And I look at Mike Woodson and I look at what he's done, over these last 3 years. It doesn't feel that way. Like, I don't have the immense amount of faith in Mike Woodson to build anything great at Indiana. Like, I don't feel like the team's going to be very good this year. And based off of what people are telling me, projecting them to finish second in the Big Ten, like, I should feel differently from that. And here's the other thing, like Mike Woodson's taken over and Indiana has become the number 2 program in the state. And that's not okay. Like Purdue is the little brother. And while Mike Woodson can say that it's disappointing to not have made the tournament last year, And it was unacceptable. It was unacceptable. And I'm sure that if you ask Mike Woodson, hey, Mike, what's it like being the second most prominent program in the state of Indiana? I'm sure he'd be like, oh, it's disappointing, but it's okay. Our ball club, we're still building. No, it's unacceptable to be the second best college basketball program in the state of Indiana. Come on now, Mike. I don't know. Once again, my feelings of being more excited for Indiana football than I am for Indiana basketball, they just continue to reign true. Maybe that's because we're in the midst of football season. But like when I look at Indiana, I'm like it's just another year of trusting Trey Galloway to lead the charge. That just doesn't feel great. I know that Omar Ballo was the number 1 ranked transfer in the transfer portal and all those things, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I look at this Indiana program and I just feel like they're going to continue to spin in circles. Maybe they make the tournament this year, but it doesn't feel like this team's going to go on like an Elite Eight run or anything like that, which is disappointing because college basketball is better when Indiana is good at basketball. And football season's better when the Colts are good at football. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, I'm going to close out the week talking about Colts, Jags, Jonathan Taylor banged up, Anthony Richardson hurt as well. I've got all that coming for you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Back to the Dan Dockett Show, presented by Moondrops Distillery on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 99.5 HD2, and always on the Indy Sports Ticket app.
The Dan Dockett Show, filling in today for the great Dan Dockett, is producer Jonathan. Hope you guys are having a nice Friday. Hopefully your weekend gets better as the week progresses. Hopefully You have a great time watching Indiana beat and hopefully cover against Northwestern tomorrow. And then hopefully we see this Indianapolis Colts team beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jonathan Taylor was once again held out of practice yesterday, was held out on Wednesday. Anthony Richardson was again a limited participant. I think we're going to see Anthony Richardson play on Sunday. But I'm not so sure yet about Jonathan Taylor. He was asked yesterday before practice about his ankle injury, and here's what he had to say.
I'm feeling a bit better today. It just sucks, when you're out there competing. It's part of the game, but you just got to take it day by day and just keep your nose to the grindstone and just try to get back out there.
What do you need to see from this week if you're able to get back into practice to have confidence going into being able to play on Sunday?
Really being able to move around, really being able to get in and out of cuts, being able to explode bursts, because especially at my position, defensive back, those are all heavy cutting positions. So that's the biggest thing.
That was Jonathan Taylor talking about his, just updating us on his ankle. Sounds like he's not going to play, right? And there's multiple guys that are once again probably going to miss games for the Colts. Braden Smith and linebackers Grant Stewart and Zaire Franklin both were full participants and practiced yesterday after not practicing on Wednesday. Ryan Kelly, Kenny Moore, and Kwity Paye, though, all once again did not practice. The big storyline, though, the biggest concern in terms of injuries is Jonathan Taylor. And look, it doesn't seem like he's going to play on Sunday. And this is the biggest blow that the Colts could take. If Ryan Kelly doesn't play again, like Tanner Bortolini was good last week. If Kenny Moore doesn't play again, Samuel Womack III was good against the Steelers. If Kwity Paye doesn't play, then the Colts have a ton of depth at that defensive line spot. But if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, it's like going from a Ferrari to a Kia. Jonathan Taylor's been one of, if not the best back in the NFL to start the season. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson, they're good, solid players. But they are Jonathan Taylor. You know that. The good news, though, is that they're going to be running behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Quentin Nelson, Will Fries have been the best guard tandem in the NFL, just paving the way for whoever's running behind them, right? So them and the rest of the offensive line should make things easier on whoever's getting the bulk of the carries on Sunday. The real thing, though, the real concern for the Colts, and if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, is that Jonathan Taylor is just this reliable option in the Colts offense. He's a guy that when Anthony Richardson isn't going well, they can give Jonathan Taylor the ball and trust that something good is going to happen. When I was thinking about Jonathan Taylor and his importance to the offense, I started thinking about myself and when I graduated college and when I moved up here to Indianapolis at the ripe age of 21 years old. I had to learn how to cook. And I could make a couple things here and there, like quesadillas, spaghetti. I had a lot of pasta, a lot of grilled peanut butter and jelly. If you've never had it, it's really good. But anyway, and so for the first month though, it was a struggle, just having to make food every night, figuring out what to make and all those things. So I call my mom seeking help. I'm like, Mom, I've been doing this on my own for a month. This whole cooking thing, not easy. She was like, well, just use the best invention ever. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, you use a crock pot. That's what I started doing. I started using a crock pot. Crock pots make things so much easier. If, Amelia, she does a lot of the cooking now that we're married, but if there's ever nights where she's like, I don't want to cook. I'm like, I got you. Crock pot meal, right? It just makes things easier. The meals are consistently good. Okay. And I cooked everything in that crock pot when I first moved up here, because it just made cooking easier while I was still learning how to make other things outside of the crock pot. And Jonathan Taylor has been Anthony Richardson's crock pot this year. Okay, and what is Anthony Richardson going to do without him on Sunday? Who is going to be that reliable offensive piece that Anthony Richardson can lean on when he's struggling? Because the best teams in the NFL have something, outside of their quarterback that they can rely on offensively when they need to get going or when they just need to get their quarterback settled in. Okay, the Chiefs, when they're in a bind, they can go to Travis Kelce. Okay, that is always an option for them. The Vikings, they know that they can go to Justin Jefferson if they're in a bind. The 49ers know that they can go to Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy if they're in a bind. For the Colts, that guy was and is Jonathan Taylor. And if he doesn't play on Sunday, who do we see step into that role? And the answer to that question feels obvious, right? Like the answer should be Michael Pittman Jr. or Josh Downs. The issue is that Anthony Richardson can't always be trusted to get the ball to Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. And so what I'm going to say next, some people aren't going to like, and that's okay. If Jonathan Taylor doesn't play on Sunday and Anthony Richardson does, I don't like this. But I think there's a decent chance that they're going to run Anthony Richardson more. Okay, and that's not comforting given the injuries that he suffered, right? It's not comforting considering his, rebellion against sliding. But I do think that when the Colts need to get their offense going, they're going to rely on Anthony Richardson's legs. He's the best runner of the football on this Colts team outside of Jonathan Taylor, right? And if Jonathan Taylor isn't available on Sunday, then they're going to lean on Anthony Richardson and his ability to run to make things happen. I don't like it. Chances are you don't like it either. But Shane Steichen has made it abundantly clear that he is not afraid to run Anthony Richardson, right? Just take last Sunday against the Steelers. Anthony Richardson gets hurt, comes out for a couple plays, comes back in, and what does Shane Steichen call? Read option. Anthony, you might have to run this ball again. And sure enough, he does. Things don't go well. He doesn't finish the game. So I feel like if Jonathan Taylor isn't there, Shane Steichen is going to see the need to run Anthony Richardson a little bit more. With all this being said, whether Jonathan Taylor plays or not, whether Anthony Richardson plays or not, even though it seems like he's going to, I like the Colts to win. The Jaguars, it's like I don't think they're very good. And I think that locker room's a little messy, right? This is a team that does two things well. They stop the run, kind of, and they run the ball incredibly well. 5.7 yards a carry is impressive. The passing game, though, hasn't been kind to them on either side of the football, and this is a passing league. Trevor Lawrence is putting up the worst year of his career right now. Okay, the Jaguars are banged up defensively. They're giving up a ton of passing yards. They've given up more passing yards in the NFL than anyone not named the Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so they're giving up a ton of yards. They're not scoring on offense. They're 30th in the NFL, averaging only 15 points a game. They're 30th in points allowed per game, giving up 27 a game. Like, this Jaguars team doesn't get in the end zone, and they're not good at keeping other teams out of the end zone. Now, they've been in a couple games late. Okay, like they could undoubtedly easily be 2-2, right? If Travis Etienne holds onto the football running into the end zone week 1 against the Dolphins, then the Jags win that game. Okay, and last week, if they can just punch in a touchdown from the 1 yard line against Houston, then they're 2-2, and no one's freaking out about the Jaguars. But what you'll notice is that in the NFL, the better teams close out close games, and you'll also notice in the NFL that there's a question that is usually followed at some point by firing, and that question is, have you lost the locker room? Okay, when that question starts to come up, that means things are bad. And that is the question that was asked to Doug Peterson, Jacksonville Jaguars head coach. Have you lost the locker room, Coach Peterson? Here's what he had to say to that.
No, I talk to these guys every day. I see them every day. And no, I have not lost the locker room. I think these guys have done everything I've asked. They continue to play and practice hard and battle, and it's a good group. It's a good group. The right leaders in there, and they know what we need to do, and they're not making excuses for it, and I'm not going to make excuses, and we just got to go do it.
That was Jacksonville Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson there talking about losing the locker room, or matter of fact, how he hasn't lost the locker room. Here's the thing. Doug Peterson hasn't been asked that question in the previous 2 seasons. And maybe it was too early to ask that question. But there were undoubtedly opportunities to do so. The Jags have lost 4 consecutive games each year under Doug Peterson. Last year, they lost 4 in a row in December, and it cost them a divisional title and a playoff spot. And he was never asked if he had lost the locker room. When they were 3-7 in 2022, 4-game losing streak that year as well, he was never asked about the locker room, which makes sense, right? Because it was earlier in his career. But this is year 3. They've had a 4-game losing streak every year he's been there. And I'm willing to bet that the players that have been there for all 3 years are tired of going on 4-game losing streaks. I guarantee you that they are. Okay? And look, the players know that their season's over. Okay, there's been one team in the history of the NFL that started 0-4 and made the playoffs. That was the San Diego Chargers way back in 1992. Okay, that's the only team that's done it. This Jacksonville Jaguars team knows that their season is over. And here's the other thing that I know about players. They talk a lot. And they talk about the team and what's going on. And I'm willing to bet that the Jacksonville Jaguars players are talking about one of two things right now. Option number one, they're talking about how awful their quarterback has been. Talking about how Trevor Lawrence has only completed 53% of his passes on the year, how through 4 games, he only has 4 touchdown passes. This is a former number 1 overall pick. This was supposed to be the guy that led us into prominence, and he's not doing that. That's option number one. The other thing that I'm willing to bet that these Jacksonville Jaguar players are talking about is that their coach is going to get fired at some point this year. Okay, now that's not a great place to be mentally going into week 5. Those are not the conversations that you want happening amongst your team going into week 5. The Jacksonville Jaguars simply look like a mess. They're banged up, and as banged up as the Colts are, there's belief in that locker room and what Shane Steichen is doing. There's also belief in that locker room and what Anthony Richardson is capable of. When I look at Jacksonville's locker room, you can't convince me that they've got a ton of faith in Trevor Lawrence right now, and you can't convince me that they've got a ton of faith in Doug Peterson, considering this is the 3rd straight year that they've gone on a 4-game losing streak. And those things matter. I think a lively Colts team that's won back-to-back games goes into the House of Horrors in Jacksonville, and they win 24-14. They break this 9-game losing streak of games played in Jacksonville, Florida, and we come back on Monday, and I have a great show because Anthony Richardson played well, and we all feel good about him for the first time this year. Because that's what's going to have to happen if the Colts are able to go on the road and beat Jacksonville without Jonathan Taylor. Other things going on this weekend. Indiana on the road taking on Northwestern. Indiana Hoosiers 13.5-point favorites. The line feels a little funky, so I'm going to stay away just because weird lines are just, I don't know. I don't like them. Like Washington being favored by Washington being favored against Michigan over the weekend. Not a great feeling. It's not like Michigan, like you would think would have been favored, but they're not. So I'm going to stay away from that. So it's interesting just kind of seeing, what else going on there. But Indiana favored by 13.5. It feels like an easy cover. We'll see. This Northwestern team's bad. They're 2-2. Their 2 wins are over Miami of Ohio, which they won 13-7, and they beat Eastern Illinois 31-7. Like 2 bad teams. They lost to Duke. They lost to Washington, a couple weeks ago, 24-5. Like once every 4 years, Northwestern seems to have a decent football team that can go, 7-5, 8-4. Whatever, but this isn't one of those years. Indiana, even though they won last week, they're coming off a rough performance with 4 turnovers. I think Kurt Cignetti is going to clean that up this week. Like I think this IU defense continues to dominate because they've dominated inferior opponents all year, and that's what Northwestern is. Okay, a quarterback that's only completing 58% of his passes is an inferior opponent. A team that's only averaging 4 yards a carry and doesn't have a 300-yard rusher through 4 games is an inferior opponent. I think this IU defense dominates Northwestern tomorrow. I think the offense plays a clean, turnover-free game. Indiana rolls, trounces, crushes Northwestern tomorrow. That game's at 3:30, by the way, 52-17. I don't expect for that game to be close at all. Thanks for tuning in to the first hour of the Dan Dockett Show. And for those of you who also tuned into the Real Jonathan Smith Show from 10 to noon, I greatly appreciate that as well. Dan Dockett will be back on Monday. Hopefully we're celebrating a Colts victory. Can't wait to come back on Monday. Once again, the Real Jonathan Smith Show starts at 10, runs till noon, followed up by the Dan Dockett Show from noon to 3. That's going to do it for me. Thanks again for tuning into this first hour of the Dan Dockett Show. Switching over to the Jim Rome Show now. Thanks again for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to us on YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. I'll talk to you on Monday starting at 10 a.m.